Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 328. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim Neal before Whatnot So Says, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin and the Duke of You Know. You want one of those Neal moments, so I guess you have to make one of your own for right now because we don't have time.
Man, outstanding.
This episode, we're talking, it's our second of a two-part discussion we've been having about the Superman family of books. This one we're going to talk about Superman 0 and 13, Supergirl 0 and 13, Superboy 0 and 13. We also start off with a special look at the new Vertigo title Lot 13, the first issue of that. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. I think this is super cool. They're offering an Adventures of Superman Jose Luis Garcia Lopez hardcover. I am loving these special release hardcovers that DC's putting together, spotlighting tremendous artistic talent. And if you haven't checked out the work of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez before, this is a great way to do it. This is a $39.99 hardcover, 50% off, only $19.99, and is only one of the amazing deals that you can get from DCBService.com. Remember, they are a digital partner, so if you're doing any digital purchases, we ask you to please click on the link from our website, go to their website, and make your purchases there. It's a great way to support a sponsor who is supporting our show, and probably if you're a podcast listener, a lot of other shows that you've been listening to. They really are very supportive of the podcasting community, so please support them. Even if you're shopping digitally, it's a great way to support them. You earn 5% credit towards a DCB service order, so it's great. Any shopping that you're doing, it doesn't cost you anything more, but then you earn credit towards a purchase for yourself, and I think that's really cool as well. So I want to thank them for continuing to support our show. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are continuing these end-of-the-world sales that they've been doing, and this is month 11 and 12 coming up. For the next 2 months, which is great for holiday time, they are doing 45% off Marvel and DC Comics trades and hardcovers. So head on over to their website and see what kind of things are on special. It's a great way to save up. Remember, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. I want to thank both of those sites for continuing to support our show. Oh, Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
I didn't know where you were going with that. Like partway through it, I'm like, oh, he's doing Superman. I thought you were having like a fit or something. I didn't know if I needed to get you help. But then partway through, I'm like, oh, wait, he's doing Superman. I get it. Yeah. So it actually worked on its own. I didn't have to ask you what you just did. I was deathly afraid I was going to have to ask you, too. On that note, let's talk some comics.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, our first chat this episode is going to be Lot 13, Chapter 1. The story by Steve Niles, art by Glenn Fabry, colors by Adam Brown, letters Saida, Saida, Temofonte. I know I'll butcher that one. Associate editor Christy Quinn, editor Ben Abernathy. And I really don't want to butcher anybody's name associated with this book, because for me, this was one, and you were kind enough to bump this up in your reading stack out of a request for me. When I read this issue, I was blown away. I just really was excited. I was looking for something with a great horror twist to it. The creative team was just right. And it delivered for me on a level that I didn't expect, because this book flew under my radar. I didn't realize it was being released, and then I saw a quick thing on Facebook, and I ended up posting to our Facebook page. So it was one of those books that, like, I normally would anticipate because of the creative team. I just missed it. And I'm pleasantly surprised by what a great Vertigo read this was. That's my take on it, though. Where were you at? 'Cause we have not discussed what your feelings are on this book, and you just read this today.
Yeah, I just read this today, and it's weird. I don't want to say I didn't like it, because I did enjoy it. I thought it was a cool story, and it was a great setup piece. But I'm not as passionate and on fire about it as you are. I think, and it's partially, I like zombie stories, I like vampire stories, but I'm not a big American Gothic horror type story. Because one, I get scared easily. And when you start going into creepy, supernatural weird stuff, it does sometimes, it does, okay, it scares me, I'll admit it. But, for some reason, the vampire stories and the zombie stories were always something I could deal with and I could be fine with. But when you start getting into ghost stories, I freak myself out over like every little sound in my house, and I'll worry about seeing some chubby little kid standing at the foot of my bed and, and stuff like that. So I've never really been a big horror fan. But it's one of the things that I can appreciate the genre and I can appreciate the story, and I did enjoy this story, but I'm like, okay, what's going to happen next? Where's this going to go? And there is some anticipation for me to see what happens next. Is this going to be an ongoing story? Is this going to be we do a couple stories with his family, move on? What is going to be Lot 13? That's, I'm kind of curious about that. So there's definitely curiousness. There's definitely appreciation for some of the visual stuff here, as well as the story being told. But again, I'm not as passionate, I think, as you are.
Well, there was a lot in this story, especially in my second read through, that really started connecting with me, because I guess at first, the first time I read it through, I guess I was assuming that it took place out of the country, and I don't know why. I guess it was just like the period. Then I went back and I read it through a second time, like, wait, this takes place in Virginia. I'm an idiot. But then, I started making the connections to, okay, which is why I said to you, I really want to talk about this, to the location and where this family was moving and their house that wasn't ready and stuff like that. And I was really starting to get excited for what was going on with this kid. Because this story opens up in the past, in 1617. And I don't know, what my disconnect was with the location the first time through. I think I was so interested in getting to the modern day that I didn't pay a lot of attention to the past stuff, other than that there was this horror story where this guy killed his family and the one little pudgy kid survived, but was buried alive. Is that how you're reading it too?
Yeah. See, at first I thought he didn't I didn't think he survived. I think he was dead. It's just they ripped the eye open. They ripped the eye part where the eye was. But then again, you think then it was, again, the second read through, I was like, no, he did survive. I'm like, wait, if he survived and they were beating him and throwing him, he would have yelled or screamed or done something. They would have known.
Do you see the page where they have the family all lined up?
Right.
And if you take a look at the dad, look at the mom and the two girls in the back, look at their necks, look at the blood and stuff like that, but then look at the visual of the kid. Now, if you watch as you keep going through the panels, in the next couple of pages, when they finally have them in the street again, look at what happens when you see them beating up the bodies on that one page where it's at the top of the page in the courthouse still. I'm sorry. It's in the courthouse still at the top of the page where they're taking all the bodies. Look at the kid on the bottom. It almost is like he's ducking under this stuff when it's happening. If you see him there, I fully believe when they threw that kid in there and the thing was ripped open, there was no accident that his eye was open. His eye was open because he was still alive. He's the only one of the family that survived.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention that, I'm like, he what? Yeah, they buried that kid alive.
And honestly, here's the sad part is, that kid, they would have killed him anyway. Because they declared him guilty because of the fact that he was a part of that family. The dad murdered his family, which they were judging the family for. But then the suicide that happened in there, they were also putting as a black mark on the family. And the family was responsible for that. So this kid, no matter what would have happened, I'm not entirely convinced the court didn't know he was alive. I don't think they cared. I think they were out to condemn this family. And that's the horror twist of this whole thing. The kid was doomed regardless of what his actual status was, because of the way that it was a witch hunt for this family, and they were just out to punish them all because the dad was a religious affront because he took his own life and killed his family.
It cracks me up when you get these moments where they blame the victim. Mm-hmm. This kid did nothing wrong, and I'm completely agreeing with you that they would have just killed him. They probably would have said, he's a witch, he survived this, kill him, or whatever they were going to go with. I was just like, It just cracks me up. And it's inappropriate to laugh about a little child being buried alive. I admit that. But it's just, and I am kicking myself for not realizing. Because, again, I was going back and forth on this. And seeing the scene of him ducking, I missed that. And then when you see him sitting in the courtroom, it's kind of like he's reaching for the rope that's tied around his neck. Mm-hmm. So he's probably tried to speak, but it was tied too tightly and he couldn't get any air. Or, I'm not exactly sure on that. But, again, that adds to the whole creepy level. And adds to the factor of... we have a tormented spirit who is going to be wandering the earth for and maybe out for revenge, maybe out for something, maybe just out for peace. I don't know. But yeah, that's wow. That adds to the creepy level of this.
See, I'm a big fan of the horror genre, and I get into that gothic horror stuff. And it really, growing up, I was freaked out by it. But then as the year, I think I still get freaked out by it, but I think it's in a different way that I'm fascinated by it now. I'm into Stephen King. I got into all that. And I think that was really, when I got into his work, that was the line that kind of pushed me over. Especially like his really dark horror genre stuff kind of pushed me over. But this stuff, when it comes out of great tragedy like that, I'm fascinated because this kid looks like a hobbit.
You'd be a little deformed, too, if you were buried alive.
Well, I think he was deformed.
I'm going to cut this kid some slack and not make, cracks about his physical appearance, because if there's anybody who deserves to be a little bit deformed, this kid's got that. He's got every right for this, and I say rock on, little man.
Do you think he was a handsome lad, before, all this? I don't think so. I think that's him, because the family wasn't the prettiest bunch. If you look at Dad... Okay, if you put the rest of his head on.
Right, yeah. You got to imagine kind of picturing the rest of the family. So maybe there's... And that actually could add to the witch hunt against his family. There could be something, deformed or off about the family, something different about the family that, will freak everybody out. Because, let's be frank, back in that period of time, and... American history was not the most forgiving and understanding to anybody who looks different. So it's, definitely if the family looks a little different, that could be the beginning of the whole witch hunt, which, again, that's the kind of stuff I'm fascinated by and stuff I want to see if they lay that out. I'm assuming they're going to. I'm assuming we're going to get this whole story behind the family and we're going to see this kind of stuff.
One of the reasons why I like to do rereads now is because I'm terrible with prologue material. In the sense that I get so excited to get into the meat and potatoes of, the main story, that sometimes I gloss over the prologue material too quickly. So then when I read it through again and I really got into the prologue materials when the story really started to click for me. And then, we go to modern day where we see this family that's moving out of their apartment living that they were doing before. It was clear that there was too many people living in this small place. And, you get into this fact that, hey, it's the excitement, because you and I have both been there. We've had, we've outgrown the space that we're in. And there's that part of you that's there was a comfort to where you were before in knowing everything and knowing where everything was. But then there's that excitement of moving to the larger space and to your next stage in life and all that. So I was getting into that and really immediately connecting with this family. And that anytime you do a move, there's always people that are getting in the way, whether they're intending to or not, that make the process just a little bit more annoying than it actually needs to be. It's let's get the stuff in the truck and go. But I love that the kids, are each having their own real issues. The one kid's passionately packing up his video games. I related to that. That would have been me. But then the girl, who's leaving her boyfriend behind, we've all been there when, that high school relationship that went on for more than a month that you thought was going to be forever. We've all been there before. So the one of the things that I really thought they did well in this series was developing a family of characters. I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know. Is this family going to be ongoing throughout the duration of the series, or are we going to see shifts as the series goes on? I don't care either way. I do care about the fact that I like them now. There's something interesting about them now. They're developing real people that I can care about, which is really a lot of the focal point of this issue, is getting us to know them and then doing the little teases of how they're being affected by this little boy. And I really like suspense horror, where it's not like, lots of blood and guts. It's not, for that. I like the idea that for this one, it's really about building a mystery and suspense over time. I don't know what's going to happen to this family or where they're going to go. And it does get gory in the right places. Just when you're like, we need something to happen, it does. But it's great because it's supernatural and the family doesn't know how to react to it. And the family almost doesn't seem to want to admit that these things are happening. Like, they witness these horrid things, and you're not sure how many of the family members actually saw it because nobody's talking about it afterwards. They'll stop a vehicle or they'll notice, like, one kid is off talking to this strange boy. But then when you get to the kid, he doesn't know that he was supposedly with somebody. So, what is the truth in all of that? I like that stuff. I get into that. I do believe, do you believe, like, when the dad saw his son off in the distance because he's trying to get the son to come and help, I believe that the boy did not know he was talking to that he was standing next to that other kid. I think the dad saw that and the kid didn't.
Oh, 100% agree. That's completely, yeah, and I think with the daughter, when she sees the image of them, on the phone, and the mom sees die, and I kind of wonder how much the daughter saw, as well. Did she see the skeleton image of the family? Because she didn't really say, look at this, Mom, oh my God, what's this? She wasn't really freaked out about it. So I'm thinking the parents are both the two who are initially seeing stuff.
Well, the daughter saw, like, the ghost image on the family, and she thought it was a cell phone glitch. So I think that's where the daughter's calm comes from, because she's, like, sitting here saying, I don't know, I'm trying to use the picture we got from Six Flags, and she's saying it matter-of-factly, like, she's convinced it's the phone that's the problem. The mom saw, like, when you see the mom's actually the only one that saw the die thing, because remember, she took the phone from the daughter? So it was in the mom's viewpoint. The only issue with the daughter at that point, the daughter said, I already turned off the phone. So you've got these weird things happening that, like, I can see the daughter still being calm with that because the daughter thinks it's a broken phone. So that's one of the things that I really like about this world is throughout it, I see the possibility that only certain family members are seeing certain things. They're things that they can't explain. They're creepy enough that, like, there's going to come a point where they're going to have to start discussing this. But they haven't hit that point yet because they've been isolated very quick, very small, to the point where you'd question what you actually saw and what you didn't. Is my head playing tricks on me? Is it a glitch? Is it, did I really see what I saw there? It was from the distance, but I'm not sure. The stuff that happened in the moving truck, like, that would really freak me out. Like, you're driving along in your moving truck trying to get to the new place, and you smash into a kid and decimate the body. You get out of the vehicle, and, like, 2 seconds after you're out of the vehicle, everything has vanished, and everything looks fine. That's when you start going, whoa, right?
That's okay, something's not right here. Let's run quickly.
I want to actually talk, before we jump ahead to some of that, I want to talk a little bit about the girlfriend and the relationship with the boy, because one of the things that I really liked about this is the tiny details that they put in that made this world feel real. The father and the mother go up and play the card of, hey, you're right, we should stay here instead of living out our dream of actually having a house and all these other things. So the daughter finally comes down and agrees to go along with the family and help pack up and everything. The boyfriend's watching as they pull away and already making eyes at a new girl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's not going to be singing O'Donna, anytime soon. It's over. He's like, okay, how you doing? Yeah, that really cracked me up. And to be honest, I don't think the daughter was completely that much into it as well. I think she's ready to move on to somebody new because they're sitting there that whole time. Oh, I'll never love anyone. Oh, I love you too. Yeah, smoochy and all that. But as soon as the dad starts like saying, "Okay, we'll call up the broker," she's like, "Hold on, Mom, Dad, stop. I totally packed everything." She's already packed and ready to go, so she wasn't really fighting too badly. It was, I think, part of it is I think she protests too much. I think she was done with with old Yahoo Corey here. So I think she was at the point where she's ready to move on to something else as well.
Do you think some of that is, though, we've been there before, you hit that age where you want to be an adult too. and you start complaining about things because you feel like you haven't been consulted, you aren't a part of the decision-making process. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure you probably hit that phase in high school too, where, you know, you hit that point where you're like complaining about things that there's really no reason to complain about just because you feel you are entitled to. And I think that's where she's at. Like, I'm like relating to that in certain ways where I'm like, you know, I probably was a pain in the neck like that too, to a certain level. I don't think I would like to think I wasn't quite as bad as she was, but I think you do hit a point where like you're doing that because of that sense of, it's stuff that we don't do as adults because you've reached that point where you're like, well, we don't really need to because we already know we have no power because we have jobs. And we were fully well aware of the fact that we have bosses. So we know our lot in life. But, you know, this kid hasn't reached that point yet where they think, like, once you're an adult, you're omnipotent.
Yeah, well, I still think that sometimes.
Yeah, I do, too, but it's only when I'm home. Because at work, they've got me really convinced I'm not.
Yeah, they get you that way, don't they?
But one of the things that I really loved about this story, you know, it's a nice change of pace for me from superhero titles, which I enjoy immensely, obviously, because we do this show. But something like this, you and I are in different places, obviously, with the whole gothic horror genre, and you're right. It's something. That's why I was interested in talking about this with you, because it's not something I think we've really done on the show. So I thought it would be an interesting discussion point to talk about where we're at with this type of book and how it feels. So I'm really into this because of the connection with the family. I think any horror story, if you are not into the protagonists, you're going to quickly get pulled out of the story. Like, if you're not into the family, if you're not into what's going on with that kid, whatever his situation is, and what he's trying to do. My question is it only going to be this kid? Or what about his family? Are they still around? Like, is he the only one that has been... I would imagine it's him because he's been so victimized. But who's to say what else is going to happen from here?
Yeah, I was thinking it was just going to be him. But again, you never completely know what's going to happen throughout these things. So there's one cool moment, and it's weird. It's not even a action-packed sequence, but it's when they get into the apartment building and they're sitting there and they each got their own separate rooms and they're all going into their things. It's just that empty hallway. And for some reason, that panel, that sequence of paneling was just that empty hallway was a really cool, ominous type moment for me. Especially, you know, given that leads to where we get to reveal the kid face to face with the ghost boy or whatever he is now, or whatever, it's just wandering spirit, whatnot. But it was just a cool moment where they're all getting ready to go into their own houses, like their own rooms. Okay, 10 minutes, kids, and it's just that empty. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. I really liked the positioning and the placement of that.
Now, the kid made them go there, right? Like, the kid being in front of the vehicle was deliberately to stop them there so they would see this place and wind up there, right? This is that little ghost kid manipulating them.
That's completely my thing. Like, part of me wonders if the kid wants to possess the little boy, and if maybe he targeted the little boy, and that's why the father saw him before, and, you know, it's one of those, or he could be the connection through the boy because it was the boy who saw the hotel when they're all sitting there. There could be some type of, you know, that way, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, see, for me, it's got a nice creep factor for it, and it has me questioning enough that I'm really intrigued by the next issue. Like, I want to see where it goes from here. So and I'm with you. Like, I want to know how they're going to keep the story going, because this is an ongoing. It's not a limited series. So my question is, what is the plan to keep the story going with this little kid and where it's all going? So I'm interested in that, you know, at least for right now. Now, here's my thing. Obviously, from my comments last episode and from right here, I love the writing of Steve Niles. The artwork is, I think, stunning. I'm very into this artwork for me. This is great horror artwork. Glenn Fabry is through the roof. But the whole creative team, honestly, I thought gelled together. That's my take on it. For you, especially with your comments about how this type of thing normally, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus when I'm saying that, but it does freak you out a little bit. Is this something that you would pick up again because of that? And that really isn't me making fun of you. I'm trying to address your honest concerns with this type of title. Would you follow this further, or are you on the fence?
No, I'm still following this because, visually, this is really cool looking. This was some really beautiful artwork that and just the everyday normal people, the facial reactions, just their interactions, and it looks and feels very natural. And I kind of really dig that in artwork, especially in comic books, and especially when we're not even dealing with superhero side. So I really want my normal everyday people to look normal every day. And we are getting some really just natural artwork. And I really enjoy that. And especially for the story we're getting, this is going to be an American Gothic horror type story. So I'm getting this natural looking artwork to go along with it. And I like that. And as you said, I'm into the family. I want to see what happens to them. Just a couple quick pages here. I'm kind of curious as to where these kids go. I want to see the story behind the freaky little boy. What's the deal with his family? What's the deal with him? Is it poltergeist looking for a body? Is it wandering spirit? What is he? Who is he? Where's this go? So I am definitely in on this series for a while now. I want to see what happens. I want to see where this goes. I am very definitely solidly curious about this.
Now, the artwork by Glenn Fabry, I don't know if you're aware of that. It's the guy who did the covers for Preacher. So you've seen the artwork before. And he did some interiors, I think, for some of the specials. Don't quote me on that. I'm almost positive he did it for some of the specials. It's been so long since I've read all of that. But it was definitely all of the covers were done by Glenn Fabry, and I loved the covers for Preacher. So for me, it's not very often that I've gotten to see his interiors throughout entire issues. And to see that in this issue was a pure joy for me because he's really a talented storyteller visually. So that was something I was greatly anticipating for this, and I thought it was just gorgeous.
And it was funny because I was sitting there and I'm thinking, I've seen his artwork before, but I literally just read it today before recording, so I didn't have a chance to do any research on the guy and see what stuff. And I was planning on it after we were done. If it didn't come up, I was going to look and see where I've seen his artwork before, but I remembered seeing it somewhere. So it's the Preacher stuff. So neat. That's okay.
I think that's pretty telling, though, that you like the book, considering it's a genre that you are very tentative on in general, that you liked it enough that you're going to continue on at least beyond this to see where the story goes and see if it continues to grab you. Because I wasn't sure from your comments at the beginning if you felt like this was something that you wanted to continue with.
Oh, I definitely, this is definitely a continue on, see where this goes. And as I said, it's for some reason, just the genre always freaked me out. Now, part of me is wondering if, because it's in that comic book format, if I'll be able to really, enjoy this. Because, for me, zombie movies used to freak me out beyond imagination. Then I started reading Walking Dead. And for some reason, when I started reading Walking Dead, it changed my mindset on the zombie genre. And now I'm a huge zombie fan. I love the zombie movies, and I'll watch the old ones and go, and I'll still jump when you're supposed to jump, when a thing pops out. But I enjoy it more. So I'm wondering if this comic actually will help me, with this type of horror, style. I don't know. And maybe it is the lack of the music and the lack of just the living, seeing dun, 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 moments going on. So I don't know. I'm very curious myself to see where this goes with me.
Yeah, I am too. We'll have to follow up at some point because I would love to see, as the series continues, how you continue to feel about it. Because I thought it was an interesting book to discuss because it's outside of something we've really talked about on the show, and I really dug it. So I'm glad that you liked it enough to continue on. So we'll definitely, even if it's just a quick casual discussion to talk about how we're enjoying the book, I'd love to follow up in the future.
Amen.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Jim, we're going to kind of do this discussion casually. I want to start talking through some of the Zero issues that we haven't gotten to yet, but also talk about the modern issues then with those titles. And I think the Superman books, there are titles, we haven't talked about Superboy Zero, Supergirl Zero, Superman Zero. We'll also talk about the 13 issues for those books as well. Supergirl number 0 is the one we'll start with, and I really found this interesting because this relates very strongly to Superman Zero, and it's funny, in my current read-through, going through again, it's funny how all three of these books relate to each other because they're setting up history and backstory that is going to play into the crossover that's coming up between these titles that I think I'm realizing now is going well beyond what I thought it was going to. between these three characters. And that's something that I'm really greatly enjoying about all this. The interconnectivity that's obviously they're heading into with these books, I think is coming at a perfect time. But the idea that Zor-El was experimenting with his daughter for the purpose of learning what her life's going to be like if he sends her to this planet, and, really trying to save his daughter and let her live beyond. This would be something that two parents I could see would have a lot of trouble dealing with. First of all, he's kept a major secret from his wife. Just how serious the issues are on Krypton, and how he's thinking of dealing with it when it comes to his daughter. Let's blast her off to another planet. I mean, that's, for us, we take these stories of Superman and Supergirl for granted, that, they would be sent off to other planets and that the family would be okay with it. I like the idea that you've got two parents where they've got different ideas on what should be done here, and even a daughter who has a different idea on what should be done here. Because Supergirl wouldn't have done this. I don't know that I would have. If my parents had done this to me, I don't know that I'd be comfortable saying, yeah, sure, send me off in a spaceship. He had to, he had to actually manipulate a lot to make this happen, which is clouding a lot of judgment on Dad. But I agree with him. I do find myself at the end agreeing with him. I think what he did was the right thing to do. But yet, what an intense risk, because he did the research. So was it a gamble? Yes, but it was a calculated gamble where he knew exactly what he was sending her into. Well, as much as you can know about what he's sending it into. But that's my take. Or do you agree with him? Did he do the right thing?
Oh, definitely agree he did the right thing. Only thing is, I probably would have taken it a step further if I was him. And this is something I always criticize Jor-El for. I'm like, okay, yeah, you built one rocket ship. Hey, build three. Or build one large enough for all three of you to go. Why do you got to send the kid or send send your daughter by themselves? If you have the technology, you have the abilities, build one for all of you, and y'all go, and you all be superhuman people. And it's on one hand, I understand, with the whole Jor-El side where he was being watched and he had to do stuff in secret. Well, his brother here is admitting he's doing stuff in secret, and he's got this whole lab off to the other side that he's kind of kept hidden from people. So, okay, you could have built more than one rocket in that place. And he and his wife could have survived the trip, maybe. Or maybe they would have died in transit. I don't know. There's a lot of unknown factors on my end.
What I think works in this story, though, this time around that I think they've shown, you've got this secret doomsday society working in the background, led by this Eradicator, who are trying to stop the scientists because they believe this is the destiny of Krypton to go down this path. So it adds a lot more weight to the fact that, why did he build a smaller ship? Well, maybe he had to move facilities he was working on this at. He really, had to look at time because they were on a very short time frame. And, being in secret, maybe he would have loved to have built three. Maybe he would have loved to have built something larger. But because of the fact that there were powers that working behind the scenes against him, that added a little bit more weight to me, that the need for secrecy drove, okay, I may want to do this, but this is really realistically all I'm capable of. And if it's an issue of not doing it at all, or being as sneaky as possible and doing something on a smaller scale and just getting my daughter out of there, that may be what I have to do. Because of the fact that if there's any hint that I might be leaving, if there's any hint that I'm building something that large, it may be one of those issues where, because they stopped the space program, this Doomsday Society. They went back and put a stop to any of the space program. So I wonder if they're just really dealing with prototypes and smaller scale models because they have no choice, because of just how secret this has to be. And I really liked the sense of danger for scientists to be working on any type of technology that could be leading them off the planet because of that. Especially given their history with the clones, because the clones were now used as, it's funny, we've got to talk about the Superboy Zero issue, because the clones became a way for this Doomsday cult to gain power. They actually were reacting off of what came with the clones and saying, hey, no, this is the path that our society is meant to head down. And I'm sure they gained a lot of followers because of the sheer terror that came from the chaos that the clones caused to their society. The clones almost destroyed their society.
Yeah, and it's funny how you look at the stories being told in comics, and you can very much apply it to modern day, society.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, fear of terrorism, fear of terrorist attacks has led to the U.S. doing different laws and different regulations and variations on society, and it's where is it going to go? What's going to happen? The whole Big Brother's watching. Oh my God, we're going to lose all our civil liberties, and you kind of see that exact type of mindset starting to flow out of this doomsday society. This everything going on with Krypton. They had this clone attack, so they start passing laws. They start, doing some ban on sciences. And hey, what is that science project you're working on really about? You're not completely trusting of scientists, even two brilliant scientists like the two brothers. So I think it's kind of neat seeing stories taking place in the comic that you can actually have a real world application to. We've seen people have this suspicion, this paranoia, and just this mistrust of society, and it's all coming right out of terror, all coming out of fear, and it's kind of neat to see that in my comics.
It's funny though, going off of what you said earlier and adding some justification to what you said, I have to wonder if Jor-El and Zor-El hadn't been driven by this paranoia. And this is where I really think the story works. If the two of them had worked together, maybe they would have saved their whole family. But because they couldn't get it together, because the wedge was driven between them because of Zor-El's need to be secret and Jor-El's need to be able to be still in the public eye, but at the same time having to be extremely careful with his own secret plans, that really increased their own need to kind of stay apart from each other, and their own fighting. It added to, we can't really be honest with each other about what we're doing. Because I wonder if they both knew what the other was doing, if that would have brought them together. And imagine if they used their brains together and their own tech together. I think they would have done exactly what you said. They would have been able to save their family. But this doomsday cult, again, in its own way, had I think a major role in keeping these brothers separate even more than they would have been. Because I think that, that's natural relationship sometimes between two brothers where they'll butt heads and things. But I wonder if that paranoia and all that just added to the ongoing rift between the two of them, that even their family, even their daughter, Kara, couldn't bring them back together. And I don't know, I really liked that element added into this story, because it's not something that I really remember from Superman storytelling. And I'm a big fan of when... if you're going to explore Superman, add to that Kryptonian lore. Give us some more of that history, because I like that kind of stuff. I love history. I love the backstory when comics really delve into this. And this is where continuity's fun. I don't mind that they're developing a new continuity. That's something that's fun to be on the ground floor with everybody reading right now and really enjoying the fleshing out of this new continuity. But there's nothing cooler in the Superman universe than the idea now, because here's what we got going on in this story that we're not realizing. We've established in these 3 issues, Superboy, our present-day Superboy, has somehow wound up on Krypton. Superman, our present-day Superman, has somehow wound up on Krypton. I'm willing to bet Supergirl's there somewhere, too. We just haven't seen her yet. Because what are the odds on the two of them winding up there and she's not there, right?
On one hand, I'd completely agree with you. But on the other hand, I don't know. Because here's why. She has issues of working with the two of them. It's the one she calls the abomination, and the other one she keeps calling a liar. So she's not as much of the a friendly team player as the other two might be. And I can see somehow she misses out on it just because she's not with them. She's not there at that right moment.
But agreeing with what you're saying, let's go to another level. Superboy's there with Superman. And look how that boy's been trained.
Right.
He's been trained in VR subconsciously that Superman beats him up, damages him severely, and that he is the Kryptonian destroyer. So he's actually being trained that way in VR subconsciously by Harvest, right?
Yeah.
So, this is stuff that's gone on in his history as well. So it's an interesting... So I guess I think all bets are off on what's going to happen there. But here's the thing, whether, it's right that Supergirl isn't there or is there, it's a backstory element that's in this right now that I'm eating up. Because here's the thing, in this story about Supergirl, Superboy has a direct role in Allura showing up on the scene with Zor-El. That didn't happen initially, right? His being there changed history, right?
Yes, well, it's weird because when, in issue 13, there's that where she's playing the back tape of her launch, the mom's there, and the mom shoots him, and you get that whole conversation that we get in issue 0. So it was recorded and documented and for history, but again,
the time change would fix that, though. Remember, if it's a time change, her tape would have been altered as well.
Yeah, so it's what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well,
was it she always supposed to be there? Was she not supposed to be there? Did Superboy change something, or is he being there part of the natural order of things?
Right, exactly. See, I love time travel stuff like that because it gets very heady.
Yeah.
What actually happened? That's the great part. And what will Clark's being there in the past do? Because there is that being. And I know I don't think we can talk about these 3 issues and not jump around a little bit, because there's elements in all of them that affect each other. There's that being at the end of it's Superman 0 that has that being at the end, right? That blows the horn.
Yeah.
And it implies that there's a possibility, a second chance to save Krypton, right? So is Clark going to be an agent to save Krypton, or is he going to be involved, in the destruction of Krypton? I don't know. I don't know about you. I'm waiting with bated breath for where this story goes. Talk about taking 0 issues. This I'm a fan of. If you're going to do a 0 month like this, and you take 3 books, and you're saying, moving forward, we're going to start having an interconnectivity between these 3 books. There's going to be things that they're going to be their own individual books, but there are going to be things going on in all 3. They're going to be kind of closer tied together. And you do something like this, they've got me intrigued to read all 3 of these books, because I want to see who's involved and where. Why was Superboy there? What is his role going to be? How is that training that he's been going through that isn't his fault going to affect him? Is he going to snap at some point? Is he able to control all that? It's bringing back elements that I loved pre the New 52 with Superboy. Those elements of, are there things that have happened to him that are part of his genetic makeup that are beyond his control? And can he work past those things? Is he strong enough to do that? And that's something where you see those heroic moments from him where he's able to fight past things that are out of his control and take control of them. I want to see those elements out of him. I'm really intrigued by this. Superman sitting over there, knowing that he has a possibility here to maybe do something. But he has no powers there, right? He can't. So he's gone back to Krypton, and I keep forgetting, neither Superboy nor Superman are going to have powers there. They're regular Kryptonians, right?
Maybe. One, he's going to have some remnants left over. Because if you remember when, Kara went back to the husk of the planet that was Krypton, or she was taken back there, or however you want to figure it out, however you want to word it, she had some remnants of the energy left over in her. So they will have a little remnants. But also part of Superman's suit that he's wearing may have something to do with storing the energy.
The newer suit that we see him in?
Yeah. We see him in, it looks a little different. There's a different color scheme to it. Maybe it's just tinting on the suit, but that could be a completely different suit that has some radiant energy stored in it. So, yes, he probably doesn't have powers, but he may still have something left in the tank. Because if you think back to the Action Comics, where it was the Superman 0, the 13, where he's being tested and he's been 5 days out of the sun, and he still has energy to spare. He still has some, juice left in the tank. So it doesn't just disappear because of the red light. He doesn't get new energy coming in. So he's got to be judicious with his expenditures of it, but he's still got a lot of power a lot of power left over.
With Kara, I'm always messed up on how to pronounce it. When we see her with Kal-El, baby Kal-El, and with the family, and that loving relationship there, she's the one that seems to get along with everybody in the family. I connect with that too. Because I think you and I are kind of wired the same way. We tend to, try to get along with everybody. And I really enjoyed those moments because you get a greater sense that the L family was not as disjointed always. That I would even think that Allura and Lara tend to communicate still. It's really just the 2 brothers. It's not a complete disconnect with the family. Maybe the mothers don't interact quite as much because they're trying to be supportive of their respective husbands. But I do get the feeling like the relationship between Zor-El and his wife is not quite the same as Jor-El and his wife, where they're having these adventures and saving each other's lives. There's definitely a different history going on here. I really ate this up. This was something that I found very, very enjoyable. You don't get a lot of times to spend a lot of time on Krypton. And I think this is something that these storylines that they've got coming up are going to have a great opportunity to do for us as fans, is to just introduce us to Krypton in a more detailed way. We've had miniseries over the years that have spent more time on Krypton and stuff like that, and we've had Superman. This isn't abnormal to have Superman actually be able to go back to Krypton and somehow to be able to meet his dad or to be a part of that situation. That's nothing that hasn't been done before. But to have it done now with a modern flair and reimagined again with a new Krypton that's been established, I'm excited. I mean, you've got to be, as a Superman fan, you've got to be excited for this coming up, right?
Oh God, yeah. And I'm eating all this stuff up because and that's something I've enjoyed reading and then rereading and then looking at the little backdrop and just seeing what society is like on Krypton. And every time I read stories like this, it makes me wish they had an ongoing series called Krypton.
Yeah.
And just showed the life of Krypton. And even if they did a series where it was just, a limited series, I'd be happy with that. I just want, and you don't have to do big adventures for me. I just want to know what Krypton's like. What's the life like there? And it was something that when we had the War of Superman and New Krypton and all those that happened, where we got into look into Krypton society and what they're like and who they are. And I really would love to have something like that come out of this, or just another more stories about Krypton. I really dig seeing that side of of the Superman story, because it gets you thinking, what if? What if they'd been able to save the planet? What if they'd been able to save more people, bring them over to Earth? Or what if Clark had grown up on Krypton? How different would he be? And it just gets your mind racing on the different possibilities.
I really like that the artist on Supergirl now is the same artist that was on that Power Girl series.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed that artwork, and I think it works here. I like it's been switched up a little bit to make it more fit like the style that was already in place for Supergirl, because Supergirl's been one of those titles since its launch again I've really enjoyed. It was one of the ones I was most worried about, and it wound up delivering exactly what I've really enjoyed about Supergirl prior to it. And I'm really glad that this series has maintained that, because it's been one of my favorites. I'm glad that this series is continuing in this direction. I want to see more. I love that we've developed a supporting cast for her, which we're going to continue to talk about in issue number 13, and a villain group that we're going to continue talking about. It's something that I think is important. But I'm getting excited about the Superman books heading in the same direction of what's working for the Batman group, the Green Lantern group. I want to see these titles have a little bit more of this interconnectivity, where there's big storylines going on that have impact. And whatever titles you're reading out of the mix, that you'll be able to be a part of that storyline and feel like you're a part of the larger picture of what's going on in the Superman world. Because I just think that's working really well in those two title lines. And, it's working also in the Supernatural line with what's been going on with Animal Man and Swamp Thing and stuff like that. So I'm glad to see them taking a look at these lines and saying the fans that are reading them are more than likely reading more than one title in that line. More than likely. And, let's shake things up in those levels, because I know that when that Man of Steel book comes out, they're already talking about how that one's going to be interconnected to all of this as well. Meaning it's going to be interconnected with the line as it comes in. So I'm excited for that direction, because Superman's a character who should feel like Batman does, feel like Green Lantern does. You should feel like it's a top-tier character where, he and his supporting cast have these amazing happenings. I was a fan of the bullet numbering stuff that they did, where each week there was a new part to the storyline coming out, and you felt like you were, getting something really of some substance out of the Superman world. And we're heading back to that. It's not going to. I think it's going to work more like the Batman and Green Lantern lines working now than the bullet numbering that I'm talking about from the past, and I'm fine with that, because they've clearly got creative teams on these books right now that have great ideas on the Superman history, mythos, and the present day characters, because I'm really loving how each title has a supporting cast that I'm getting to know more about, I'm beginning to care more about, and I want to see more out of. I like things like seeing Jimmy Olsen appear in Superboy. I like seeing different characters appear in different titles and have a relevance there, because these are characters who if you're a newspaper reporter or a photographer, you should wind up in places where these other characters are if they're winding up in Metropolis, for example, right?
Oh, definitely.
It's the same world. So I'm glad this interconnectivity is happening between them, because it just feels like it should be that way.
Hey, question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned developing of Supergirl's villains, and that triggered something in my head. If you go back to where she's in, the chamber with the dad, and she just gets out, and they show that other person sitting still in the chamber being tested on. That's that female that she ran up against, that took her back to Krypton, the World Killers.
Right.
That just dawned on me now. I was like, because I saw her. I'm like, oh, okay. And it just for whatever reason, it completely just went over my head. And then you're mentioning, I'm like, wait a minute. Oh my God, that's the villain. So yeah. So
now wait, just so I'm really not throwing you under the bus here. I did not get that on the first read through. That was like a third read through for me, because we've been talking about these Zero issues since they've been released. So I've read this book about 4 times. It probably was like the last read through I actually caught that myself. I don't know when I don't remember exactly which read through I caught it in, but it definitely was not the first 2. And I'm like, oh wait a minute, and I like that. I like when they put little tiny details in there, because did they have to even put that sequence in there? No, but to put that in there adds a sense of the larger world having some history to it. Like, that character is somebody from the past. It would make sense to put in there. It's great writing, great artistic choice to put that in there. I'm assuming that was something script-based that was put in there, and what a great idea to add that in there, because that is one of those, oh, that's cool moments that I so totally love.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, that's neat. I'm like, I'm smacking myself for not figuring out before this, but you know what? It's kind of again, it adds to the continuation of the story. And when that character comes back, that'll add even more to the next time she's there. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah. Because she's coming back. The character's not done. So we're going to see more of that. And kind of curious now, there's so much more questions I have about this universe, about her role in it. And I started thinking about taking back my comment about Kara about her not being there on Krypton, because I'm now thinking if she shows back up Krypton, she's going to go back to the laboratory. She's going to go to the lab, and she's going to deal with that kind of stuff. She's not, where Superboy went to the house where they're living, to warn the mother and give her the chance to say goodbye to her daughter. Kara's going to go back to the laboratory, and maybe Kara's the one who frees and saves the other experiments that the dad's working on.
Or does she try to stop her father?
Oh, yeah. Or does she try to stop the father? Yeah, there's multiple sides of this that could come out of this. And I'm very excited to see this play out, because I want to know, and we're going to eventually get it. I want to see how they get there and how that all happens. The more I talk about it, the more I read about it, the more I think about it, the more excited I get over this. And just my mind starts racing and starts swimming where these different things can go. And it's, another, the fact that the Zor-El was building those energy, conduits that ended up kind of putting in a little energy barrier, a force shield around Argo City. Now, it didn't completely save the city, but they took more of the initial blow, which is why later when she comes back, there's more of a city there. It's not completely destroyed. It's that part of the planet that survived. Now, immediately I'm wondering, did other people survive? Was there a way for other people to get off the planet? Do we have more Kryptonians out there somewhere?
Well, the funny thing is we've got this crossover coming up that we're going to be talking about in this one, where we see the tease too, that there is another Kryptonian on Earth. So is there more beyond that? And I think that storyline might start to answer some of those questions, might not. Because you're right, there's a lot of open-endedness to what's going on here that doesn't... And I don't know that you need to spell all that out now,
Oh, God, no. But I'd like to get more little teasers for future stories. And I think we're going to get that. And I think we've already gotten teasers that there are possibility of more Kryptonians out there.
Is it me, or is the second year of the Superman books like starting to get way more exciting than the first year? Like, and this isn't a knock. I really enjoyed the first year, but the second year, in a way that I don't feel I was in the first year, I'm like intensely anticipating, and maybe you and I are in different places with this, like these titles: Superman, Superboy, Supergirl. I dug Superboy. I loved his tie-ins, but I enjoyed Superboy for his interconnectivity with Teen Titans more than his role in the Superman world. Supergirl, I enjoyed as her own kind of like standalone title. I was really digging that in that world. Not so much like she had the cameos with Superman, but I wasn't like really feeling like that was the big draw for me. The big draw for me was getting to know her and her history. Superman's been one of those titles, like, I've been enjoying Superman, but Action Comics has clearly been, for me, the flagship. That's been the one where, like, the meat and potatoes has been happening in. Now, the second year going through, my attention has really shifted to anticipating what's going on with these three books and how they are relating to each other. And Superman in particular, like, I mean, let's look at Superman number 0, the artwork. I just think I really like what Kenneth Rocafort's doing here. I've enjoyed greatly the artwork beforehand. We had issues with Nicholas Scott, who's one of my favorite artists, may be my favorite artist right now. It's hard for me to pin that down, but I've greatly enjoyed her on books like Secret Six, for example. The stuff she's doing on Earth 2, I think, is stellar. So she may be my favorite artist going. Those issues with her really made me a believer in this current Superman suit. But now we're getting into, I think it's the energy of Scott Lobdell being able to really take over, and it's clear that we've got a writer here who's going to have a run on this book, I'm hoping, because I like his ideas and his direction that he's going in, because the level for, in my opinion, for the Superman titles has been kicked up because of the direction. Like, I felt it with the annual, that first annual that he had, where he had a chance to show us with Hellspawn, Superman duking it out. There's something about that annual that's just really hit home for me. So I don't know, are you feeling this way, like, about this book, or is it just me, or have you been feeling this way all along?
Oh, I think I've always been excited about the book, but not to the level I was, not to the level I currently am now. There's definitely been an increase to the excitement, an increase, like, for example, when the Court of Owls and everything going on in the Bat books, everything going on in the Green books, and Aquaman, and and just everything, I'm like, oh, this is really, yeah, there was an excitement that I'd read Superman, like, oh, this is cool, yeah, this is good, I like this, but there wasn't just this, oh my god, so there is a level of an excitement, but it wasn't to where I am now. It's like now they've kicked it up to 11 for me. I'm really getting behind this. I'm really going, okay, you know what? I'm reading Superman before I'm reading Bat books. I'm reading Superman before I read the Green books now, because we're getting this firing going. And I love the fact that Superboy and Supergirl, for me, are feeling like a super family.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I love this first year intros. I loved how they handled it. It was absolutely stellar storytelling. But with you, I was liking Superboy's interaction with Teen Titans and just how he was and where he's coming from. Supergirl, I was loving just the introduction of her and just where it's going. They're developing her own little stories. And I was liking the fact that they were developing her own solid universe. Yes. They were building a foundation. Well, now we have a super family. Now we have super titles, and they're all working together, and that I think is why it's kicked up to 11 for me, and that's why I'm like, yeah, I have that same fire, in my gullet that I had for the Bat books and that I had for the Green book. So yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with you on there has been an increase in my excitement, increase in my enjoyment.
I think the first year was essential to build to this. Like, I think everything they did beforehand was a building block to it. It was a great prologue building up to an opportunity where you can start doing this kind of stuff. But your Court of All analogies and the things that are going on in the Green books, I think Batman and the Green Lantern books were in a different place at the kickoff of this universe that the Superman books weren't. Because I think such drastic changes went on with these titles that the other two groups that we're mentioning didn't really need to have, because a lot of their continuity was still in place from the pre-Flashpoint era. I'm super excited for this because I think the year built to this point where we're in this place where we can be seeing this. I got to tell you how much I'm really enjoying the artwork in Superman with this Zero issue. This Kenneth Rocafort, I think, is just really doing such a great job on the art. How do you feel about the artwork on that? I mean, it's because I don't know if, I know how you are. You and I see art sometimes a little differently, but I really like the style on this series, especially in the Krypton issue, where we get to really see him play around with landscapes and scenery and the backgrounds. And obviously the colorist, I want to give shout-outs to, because I just think it's a very beautiful-looking book, and I love the styling of it. I love that Jor-El has a look that he feels like he's Superman's dad. Like, you can see the family resemblance. I'm always a fan of that. So I don't know, how are you artistically with this title?
Artistically, I'm really digging it. This is, again, I'm going to echo a lot of your sentiments and a lot of your, just your comments, especially towards the Krypton sequences. I want it to have that, special look to it. I want it, I want to feel that the creative team, the art team said, okay, let's do this. And, they actually, you can see that in my head, I see them thinking and focusing, okay, we got to make this Krypton. This isn't just another world. This isn't just another planet. This is another city. This is Krypton. This is something we have to do special. Now, I'm going to be curious to see the continuations and see how the story goes. Because, this is, again, I do like variation in the artwork. I do like my different styles. I like different books having different looks to them. So, this is, I don't want to say a different look because it does have a lot of the elements that I enjoy. It does have a lot of realistic looking and a lot of the facial expressions, a lot of the mannerisms that come through in the artwork. There's a lot of just that attention to detail. The background artwork, the stuff hanging on the wall, the different costumes and suits of armor, etc. in the laboratory. Kind of when he and his buddy are going back and forth, you kind of can get the the chuckling and just the dialogue of two friends. Just okay, come on, just relax. You're not a people person, let me do this for you. And you kind of get that feel of two old friends that have hung out and they've thrown back a couple beers and they've just watched the game, and just you can see the friendship there, and I like that, and this art really brings that home.
Kenneth Rocafort, I remember his work from Top Cow, so I've known the artist prior to his work here, and I've really liked seeing these artists who come from other companies and come from other backgrounds, and them have a chance to play around in the DC world. I've always liked that at Marvel too. It's fun. I've got my favorite artists that have been around for years, and I love seeing them get takes on new books as well that they haven't done before, because it's always fun to see. One of the great things about artists are how they change things up for each new project they're involved in. It's their chance to stretch their creative legs and really, really show us something that we've never seen before, or show us things that we've seen before in a new way that just makes us go, wow, again. And I think that's really important. I think it's important every so often to have an artist change. After a run, in some cases, a really strong run where they have a chance to really develop a lot of new material over time. But there comes a point where it's great to have that artistic change and to let that other artist that was on this project for a long time stretch their creative legs somewhere else. And even if they come back to this project again, they're going to be a different person, a different artist when they come back because of their growth. I think that's something in the comic industry we as fans, I don't think acknowledge enough, is how much the artists that are involved and the writers that are involved in these titles grow with each varied project that they do. They do something new. They play around with something else, and they can come back to characters that they've done before and tell new stories with them and show us new things because of the lessons they've learned or the things that they've played around with creatively elsewhere with different projects. And it's really kind of cool to see that kind of creative diversity. I think comics are really unique to that. That it's fun to see people come back to things that they've been on before, just because they're going to have a different sensibility than what they had, a maturity that they haven't had previously. And I think that's kind of neat. This sequence, my favorite sequence in this was, please, there is no reason for anyone to get hurt here. Bloodshed is not going to resolve anything. Again, that is up to you, Jor-El. I wasn't talking to you, Arana. Lara, No promises, beloved. What I loved about that was Lara, a lot of times in the Superman storytelling, is kind of the doting wife who takes a backseat to her husband. I'm a big fan of, especially in modern day where we're trying to show empowerment of both sexes, really finding creative ways to use both parents. Because, I'm going to be honest with you, I love both of my parents dearly. I do get something very different from my dad than I get from my mom. My mom has a strength in a different way than my dad has. Both of my parents, top notch. I love them to death. But, it's this difference that you're seeing from Jor-El and Lara and seeing a strength from Lara. You can see Superman looking at these parents for the first time and really getting a respect for who his mom was and what she brought to the table. I love her being the butt kicker.
Oh, God, yeah.
I think that was so great.
It was funny. As soon as you're like, my favorite scene, I just started laughing because I knew you and I were in the same boat, same boat there. And I was just like, I love the fact that she is the military. She learned the sciences, but she also learned military academy. She was at the Kryptonian military academy. She was she's the warrior. She's the fighter. And later on, even when she stabs, Arana or however the name is pronounced. She's like, I don't want to have to break you out of the Phantom Zone again.
Just such great stuff. And then, as that sequence goes on, one of the things I really enjoyed is you see more members of that group show up. You get a sense of scale for Eradicator's group. This is something that it's a cult that's been creative. There's so many people involved. It's a true cult that it's not a small level cult. It's really taken all of Krypton by storm. Because the history of the Clone War, or the clone battles, were all encompassing to the planet. So it would be easy to have factions of this all over Krypton. So you would have large numbers of people who would believe in this philosophy. And it actually shows why it was so dangerous for scientists to try and do experiments involving space. Again, adding to this idea, why were Jor-El and Zor-El limited in what they could accomplish? It wasn't just the fact that they were trying to keep it from the council. They also had to worry about this cult and the sheer numbers. And look at what was happening. Jor-El's being directly attacked here. Zor-El had to go into hiding because of this type of situation. So it just adds more weight to why couldn't they save the whole family? Because of stuff like this. It wasn't just one source. It was a variety of heavy-ended things that they were battling against as a planet. Now, I really like that because the question, I think, always comes back, why wouldn't you have created that? And I think a lot of this is answering that. It's putting into question, well, what was he really capable of doing under these limitations? And that intensity, especially using the Eradicator. I know you and I are both big fans of the old Eradicator concept, and I'm going to be curious to see if the Eradicator survived all this, right?
Well, I think the Eradicator did survive it, and I think we've already seen the Eradicator.
You think so? You think that's who that is? See, a part of me thinks that. A part of me wonders if that might be too easy.
I'm actually thinking the Eradicator's Harvest.
Oh! I wasn't thinking that. But I like that idea.
That's my opinion, that's who Harvest is.
And that would be explaining why he's I like that. I don't know if I'm 100% sold on that, but I got to say, I don't think it's that Kryptonian that we're seeing in this Hell on Earth crossover. I really don't think that's the Eradicator. I like that idea a lot better than that. I thought that's where you were going with it.
No,
I like that idea better.
Yeah, I was thinking, I kind of started thinking about that the Eradicator, and it was the Superboy issue where he's really listing the history in the past. I'm like, this dude's involved with this. I'm like, holy crud! I think the Harvest, and that was my whole connection, my whole understanding behind it. It was actually after reading all of these and getting this bigger picture of Krypton that I started thinking that the Eradicator's Harvest. And it's something that I was glad because I'm reading all these different titles, because I'm reading the full family and I'm getting this, and it's multiple read-throughs that kind of started clicking and registering stuff. Hell or Heel or Heel or however you're going to pronounce the name, I don't know who that is yet, but I'm thinking that's just a Kryptonian. Maybe he's a member of the cult, but I part of me doesn't think he is. I think there's something, he's got his own story. and it hasn't played out. It's gonna play out in the crossover, and we'll find out who he is. But yeah, I'm kind of curious about who he is and where everything's coming from on that side as well.
I know my other favorite sequence, and I know we've already talked about this because we talked about his costume. How do I know this? Because I was there. I am Kal-El, last son of Krypton. I love the costume in this. And it's funny how I love it so much because we know he's wearing that because he's on Krypton. We know that suit might have some special abilities or he's wearing it for stealth purposes. I don't know, exactly what's leading to that outfit that he's wearing. I think there's a lot of different possibilities on that. But I really like it because he's wearing it specifically because he's on Krypton. I want to see what's leading to all this. Why is he there? What is he hoping to accomplish? And what will anything that he does there, whether he saves it or not, have an effect on in the future?
Here's something just kind of clicked in my head. Mm-hmm. We know Clark has powers on Krypton.
Because he's up that high?
Because he's up that high. 2, he's using his X-ray vision, supervision, to see through the building and see his parents. Plus, he's using his super hearing to hear their conversation.
Brilliant. Yeah, good point. Duh. The evidence is all right there.
Yeah, so he does have his powers somehow. Whether it's the suit, whether it's the excess energy stored over, or where it comes from, there is some juice there. He's still got a little bit left in the tank.
Well, it's clear then what they're doing when they're establishing in his own book. And we'll talk about that with issue 13. The training that he's doing there, that is for the purpose of establishing for us as fans that he's able to store some of this, right?
Yeah. That's part of my thought process on it. And we're going to learn a little bit more about Superman. It was kind of cool seeing Superman actually flex his muscle and start thinking on those lines, saying, hey, what are my limits? I got to start studying this stuff, and let me find somebody I can start, he's building his own confidants. He's building his own people that he can trust with this type of information.
Let's talk about Superboy number 0, because now that we've painted the picture of the other two, we're starting to learn why, and why calling Khan was such an insult from Supergirl. Because he's this crazed clone that went nuts and started going on this massive killing spree. He was trying to wipe out the regular people who weren't clones, right?
And he did a pretty good job of destroying the regular people because he is the beginning catalyst for the destruction of Krypton.
Jim, we know Supergirl was in the past. She's right there in issue 0 in this double-page spread. When the whole army's saying death to all Kryptonians, she's right there. She's in the past. She's right there. She's watching all this.
Dude, I completely missed her.
I did too. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, oh my God, she's right there. She's Waldo. That is super. So we know she's there too now. All 3 of them are there. I wonder if this is spinning out of this Hell on Earth storyline. Like something there with this other Kryptonian is leading them to the past.
Holy crud. And yeah, wow. Never saw her until that moment. Until you just mentioned it now. I'm kicking myself. And I'll tell you, I know exactly why. Because I was always so focused on him. I was always so focused on Khan there. Death to all Kryptonians. And just even his brutes. And I broke my cardinal rule in reading a comic book. And my cardinal rule always is always look at the back. Always look at the corners. Always look at just the parts that, the backdrop, the background. Always study that. And I broke my cardinal rule. Ugh.
I love the way she's drawn there, though. She's clearly a deer caught in the headlights watching all this. And I can't believe I didn't notice it before either. I'm breaking a lot of my rules because, I did multiple read-throughs of this issue. And I think because of all the chaos going around, I was focused either on him or his army or, like, the victims, like that girl in the front with her child. Those are things that I was watching. I never paid attention to it until we were just now. I can be honest with you, and there's a lot of, I guarantee you there's other people who have found this on the internet long before we did. So we're not like reinventing anything. There's probably a lot of our listeners going, what do you mean you didn't get? I got it first time through. And more power to you. I did not. I love that it's there, though. And I love that there's so much going on, and that's the way they chose to put her in. Because those tiny details are something that I eat up. Especially when you eventually discover them probably later than everybody else who read the book did.
Yeah, yeah. I'm shocked, and I'm stunned by both of us. We both missed that, and kudos to you for catching it just now. Ah.
Do you think now, how do you feel about the clones' plight, like in all this? They were created, I honestly, I have trouble not having sympathy for them. They were created for the purpose of being sent up into space in rockets so that the regular people wouldn't die. So you're sending up sentient beings into space to die. And in hopes that, like, eventually, through a roll of the dice, you will find that thing that makes it so they don't, so that you can go up.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. And it all had to do with the different gravity and all that situation, how the space program on Krypton is much more dangerous than it was on our world. Maybe that had to do with why you couldn't put a whole family into one of the rockets either. Why it had to be, like, just Kara. Why it had to be just Kal-El. Because maybe the idea of putting 3 people in one of those things isn't as easy as it would be on our world. You really have to craft your ship in a way that it's catered to the specific passenger that's traveling. I don't know. I'm just throwing out my own speculation on why. Because you brought that up before, and it's always an excellent point. Why not everybody? I think there's more than one reason. And I'm wondering if some of the science, because of the different gravity on the planet, might be part of the reason as well. You're dealing with a lot more weight, all kinds of other different issues that you wouldn't be dealing with, especially with the fact that people were dying literally when they were doing it. Maybe to protect 3 people is not as easy as to protect 1.
Oh, definitely. And it's funny because the more we start thinking about this and the more we start talking about it and you start looking at it, there's very logical explanations why it's just the 2 of them, why it was just them. And I really digged, again, another cool backstory, another cool, output, and it wasn't just Superboy's backstory. We got more of this Kryptonian knowledge. We got more of this history of the cons, of the clones. And I completely, co-sign with you on the sentiment towards the clones. We had animal testing here. We had, the space monkeys that they launched up into space before they started sending the humans, and the Russians had the cosmonaut dog, that they sent up there. And so, on one hand, you feel bad for these animals that you're doing this for, but on the other hand, you're like, it's a monkey, it's a dog. I feel bad for them because they didn't have a say in the matter. But in the end, it isn't. I'd rather save the life of a human over the life of a dog. Well, this is a clone. This is an actual living entity that can speak and think and talk and walks around looking just like us. So I would have issues with them using clones for this type of stuff. Using I can't even think of this. There was a story where they built clones to harvest them for organs for people. And the whole purpose behind making these clones were, hey, you need a new heart? Well, go to your clone and take the heart out of your clone. Or you need kidneys? Hey, there you go. It's an immediate an automatic organ transplant match. It's perfect for you. I personally find that wrong. That's just kind of crazy for me to say that, but I think everybody would sit there and say, yeah, it's not right. But here again, it's another society, another type of look at something far-fetched that we wouldn't be able to do. But if we had the technology, if we had the capability of doing stuff like this, I completely think, the government, the U.S. society, we would actually say, yeah, okay, let's try this. Let's see what happens with these clones. And it's part of the reason there's so much anti-cloning, anti-genetic study going on in our current politics, because people are worried about things like this.
Well, it becomes, it goes back to the whole, abortion thing, which is, big controversy right now. It's at what point in time do you consider it sentient life? And that becomes, and I'm not revealing my politics by saying that is what the controversy is. I'm not even, to be 100% honest with you, I'm not even saying I have an answer to all that, because I really don't. And it's one of the reasons why that becomes such a tricky, I think, subject for our society, and it's why I think it's so hard to legislate. And one of the dangers, I think, of legislating that is pinning those things down. And when is it the mom's choice? When is it not? That becomes very tricky. But with the cloning, it's the same problem. Once you start creating life like that, at what point in time, there's a difference between cloning organs and cloning a person, cloning an animal, making these living things. that are actually alive? And is there a sentience there? And what does that mean? And is it okay then if there's a sentience there to harvest these things because you made them? I don't know that it is. You know what I mean? That it gets very, very morally tricky. That's one of the things that I love when comics will go this route, because it opens up, why is it so hard to pin all of this stuff down? And it is because of these type of questions. And it's why I understand deep-rooted controversies in all of this. I do think art imitates life, and when they do, they end up expressing controversial issues in a way that I think helps us to approach them more objectively and to kind of see all sides of them, which I think we're having trouble doing as a society. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I can't even say I'm completely not guilty of doing this, because I do it. You get locked into your style.
Sure.
You get locked into your mindset and what you think is right, and it is hard to open up the possibility that somebody else is right, that somebody else has an idea, or there's some validity to their argument. And it's a very difficult thing to actually give up control, give up a little bit of lock of your ideology, and or just where you're currently standing, and not fight for it, and just say, okay, let me listen to your argument and let me hear what you have to say. You may not change my opinion, but I'm willing to hear you out. And I think that's the beginning of any understanding and any conflict, any conflict resolution, is you have to start at that point. And that's the hardest first step, is okay, let me hear your side of it.
Anytime you're dealing with absolutes one way or another, that's legislation you have to be very, very careful of. And you can't rush that legislation, because you're going to wind up making horrid mistakes, And that's why do politics, sometimes politics take too long in infuriating ways. In other cases, it's one of the reasons why I'm glad we can vote down people that are rushing legislation that they shouldn't be, because of the fact that you can say to them, hey, we need to send you a message that you should not be doing this. Not take your time, and let's really, if we're going to legislate anything, if we're going to legislate something that we should or shouldn't legislate, let's make sure we really know what we're doing, and we've counted on all factors before we do that legislation. Cloning enters into that category, because it's one of those areas where I'm all for the technology aspect of using cloning to save lives. And, can cloning help cure things like cancer and stuff like that? My mom's been going through for the last 6 years stage 4 breast cancer. And, the question constantly to our family is she ever going to hit a point in time where she's cured? So, when they talk about cloning and looking at those genetics as a possible way of maybe finding a cure for cancer, I'm highly interested in that. But not at the expense of, killing sentient life, to accomplish those goals. So that's where, there's that part of me that sees both sides of it, and kind of looking at that. And that's where you got to be really, really careful, and yet get really, really frustrated at how slow moving that kind of stuff is because of it. And then you see this, where you got a world where they clearly rushed to cloning, and look what happened. It's an extreme example, because this isn't going to happen on our world where, God would hope not. But I really enjoy when you see this kind of stuff, and it mimics and takes to an extreme current issues that we're really dealing with right now. This was something, Superboy introduced this years ago as a concept, that Superboy was the clone, in the previous storyline. This was, and again, it's funny how, sometimes people get an uproar that they rebooted this. Well, you got to remember that the Superboy concept at its origin was originally Clark Kent being, was the younger Clark Kent. And they rebooted and made this new kid, being the clone of Superman in, the death of Superman. Now they've rebooted him again for this and made him more modern today, doing what he did, I think, in the Death and Return of Superman. Because I thought when he's in the Death and Return of Superman, he was cutting edge as a character, introducing these concepts and really playing with them in the comics. Today, they've really upped the game on it and made it exactly what it was meant to do in its original concept again, and made it work. And when you've got this, and you've got this uprising on Krypton because of it, and in many ways, you can see how this will make Superboy, Superboy was trying to help out Supergirl's family in her issue. even though she's been cruel to him. What is going to get him to that point where he's willing to do that? That says a lot for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that moment is pivotal there, knowing how she feels and knowing what she's viewing here.
Well, one of the things that I've really loved about the Superboy title has been just his growth as a person.
Yes.
And his comprehension. It's, you see it here in the Zero issue where he has no idea of what is right and what is wrong. He doesn't have that moral code. He doesn't have that moral trigger because he's only, a week or 2 weeks old at this point in time. He's never had anyone saying, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. He's never had that, that guiding hand, that mentor, teaching him. Well, now in life, as an adult-ish, as a kid, or however you want to refer to him as, he's got, these people around him. And they're starting to guide him. They're starting to understand, and he's learning from them. And it's, he gets to that point, and he's getting to that point where he knows he needs to do something better. There's still stuff he's still learning. It's still a learning curve in the judgment process, but it's getting there. And I like seeing that character growth. And I really do want to see that moment when they're going back in time, deciding, okay, what do we got to do? And who does what, or how does that happen? Or do they just, boom, pop up and then they're there and they have to figure out? Or there's so many what's going to happen next moments. I'm like, ugh.
I agree with you. And that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying about this is those moments that are in there just kind of wondering where this book's going to go. I love Harvest not being dropped out of this and actually showing us that Harvest has a bigger role. I don't know if Harvest is the Eradicator or not, but boy, he sure knows a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So I didn't see it that way until you mentioned it. Maybe he is the Eradicator and he's already there. That would make a whole lot of sense. So I really am enjoying that. And that would explain why he knows how to make the clones and how that whole process. The combat training sequences and all this were something that I really liked. Seeing where his anger comes from, where his disconnect comes from, because of the fact that he's really got two things going on. He can't ever fully concentrate on both of them. And that's by design. The Harvest, for the extents and purposes of what he's trying to do, does not want Superboy aware of what he's doing. And it's funny how I think he's been made into Superboy for the purpose of, is he trying to trash the Superman name with what he's going to do with Superboy? Is that why he's saying the reasons why he's Superboy were readily apparent later? Or is it because of his DNA being... Is his DNA still from Clark and Lex combined? And does that have something to do with it? I don't know. I think that works on a few different levels, too. Being able to use that symbol now, if we create this guy to be this weapon of destruction, you're now taking the distrust that's already there for Superman and amplifying it? Could that be his goal? I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many different, and I do question even whether Lex is now the second half of the genetics. Heck, I'm questioning whether Clark's the half of the genetics. If we have this person who has so much knowledge about the Kryptonians and who I think maybe was on Krypton during all this stuff, maybe he's got access to other Kryptonian DNA. Maybe Superboy isn't the product of the House of L, and this is just more of okay, let's throw this down there to kind of discredit the Superman name. Let's discredit the House of L. Maybe I'm wrong and it's not the Eradicator. Maybe it's somebody who doesn't like the House of L. There's so many different areas this could be. The fact that Harvest does know so much about Krypton, does know so much about just who they are, where they come from. Maybe there's a whole nother part of the story that we haven't seen yet. Maybe there's something else beyond this. And that's because you got the whole... he had access to future tech. He knew how to modify the Legion of Superheroes time bubble.
Yeah.
And he knew how to deal with them, and he manipulated getting them back in time for his own purposes. So, Harvest, it may not be something as simple as just one thing. There may be multiple factions to this guy. There may be... he's right now a very large mystery, and I don't think we're going to get all the information anytime soon, but we're going to get more pieces to the puzzle.
My question about him, I guess it all depends on how he knows all about that that time stuff would make me decide on who he is, really. Because the fact that he knows that makes me wonder, is he then the Eradicator or not? I don't know. But could his knowledge of time technology have something to do with how these guys wind up on Krypton? I don't know. It's so many questions that keep coming up through all this that I'm genuinely interested in. That's where these, I thought, were three incredibly successful Zero issues. When you see Superboy standing there with behind him his allies that he's made up through the Ravagers, and then, this makes me wonder, this being from Krypton, is that the new Bizarro?
What, in that page?
That's
what I took it as. That's
that guy from the Hell on. That's the guy from the Hell on Earth. That's him. But why does he got the backwards symbol?
See, I don't take it that that's the guy from Hell on. I took it that that's the new Bizarro, because they referred
he's wearing
to
the
Superboy.
He's wearing the same outfit, dude.
Well, here's the thing: they referred to Superboy earlier as Experiment 02. Bizarro is Experiment 01. It's the first attempt at cloning that didn't completely work. So I think this isn't that same guy. I think this is somebody different.
I'm convinced now it's the same guy. Take a look at that. When we look at Superman number 13, which I think we just need to jump to next. After we'll take a break here and go on to our next segment. But after we talk about Superman number 13, I take a look at that guy's outfit. That's that guy. Is he the new Bizarro? I don't know. We'll have to see.
I quickly opened it up.
That's that guy.
Yeah, that's the same guy. That is the same guy. Is he going to be the new Bizarro? I don't know. And his arms are crossed across his chest, so you can't really see, his emblem. But he's kind of got some type of chest emblem there. So, yeah, who is? Wow. I was thinking that. That's the new Bizarro. That was the first thought that popped in my head.
The Superboy book,
I can't wait to meet that guy. And I'm like, I guess oh, wow. Yeah.
That's him, right?
That's him, dude. I'm looking at the two pictures side by side. And especially because you mentioned about how the outfit is and just the way it looks. And just, that looks like him, dude.
So that adds a whole new twist to that storyline. And maybe that'll is that the thing that starts to make Supergirl a little more sympathetic to Superboy, or maybe makes him more sympathetic to her? I don't know. I really liked in her Zero issue how and that stood out for me, he was telling the mom, make sure you go, you still have time to go say goodbye to Kara. He's deliberately trying to do that. Why? Why does he have that feeling to do that? That's a really, for somebody who hasn't treated him very well, it's a really emotionally strong thing that he did there. And I really liked that. That stood out for me as something that I thought was neat.
Yeah, and the other thing I am thinking of is, what if the saying goodbye to Kara wasn't Kara the first time she left? What if Superboy knows that Kara is going to be at that lab after her rocket ship takes off? Kara is going to be there, and that'll give her a chance to say goodbye to her parents.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that adds a whole new twist to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's so much you can do with this time stuff that it makes your head spin and makes you dizzy. And just, I wonder if we're going to I'm hoping we get that moment where she gets that final farewell to her parents saying, hey, we can't bring you back with us, but I can say goodbye. I can have this one moment just to tell you how much I love you and see you. And boom, and then she comes back. Hopefully they'll have that moment. Hopefully they'll have that nice, that good, that cool, nice moment between them.
Jim, we have a listener voicemail. Let's go ahead and jump to that to take a little breather, and then we will jump back and finish off by doing like a quick discussion of the 13 issues of each of these titles, issue number 13 of each of these titles, just to kind of wrap up where we're at presently with these books.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
How's it going, guys? Brandon calling again. Just listening to the latest podcast right now. Waiting in a 2-hour line to get my tire changed, so I figured I'd give a call. I actually do have an opinion on a couple of the costumes that I haven't liked in the New 52, the changes. Green Arrow, for one, I'm not a big fan of the goggles look. I don't know why I can't get past it. Something about it it's not right to me. I'm not saying go back to the classic completely, because the Arrow show that's on TV right now, God, I'm loving it so much. And that costume works on TV. It works. It's great. So that's one that's kind of bothered me, along with his former sidekick, the former Speedy Arsenal, Roy Harper, whatever you want to call him now. The trucker hat thing. I just don't know what is up with the trucker hat. It's kind of weird to see a superhero running around, especially the latest issues. I haven't been keeping up with Red Hood and the Outlaws. They're in space. So running around with trucker hat in space, that's kind of crazy. Not too big of a fan of that one. And actually, to go along with the discussion, Steel, I didn't like it. I guess it to me it brought me to Cyborg. It made me think of Cyborg right off the bat. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of changing. I'd love to change. I love the old costume. I'd love to see maybe the mask come back in some sort of a way. That would be great. But that costume too kind of bothered me when it came out. So not too big of a fan of that one. Other than that, I'm pretty okay with the rest of what they've changed. Catwoman I think looks a little different. I'm down for her costume. It tends to be sexier in the beginning and not so sexy now. Depends on which Gilliam artist is writing it. Vince Gilliam, I think, started. We all know he's known for his little raunchy kind of drawings. But other than that, I had one more comment to go along with the Superman show. Guys, I don't know if you've been reading the Beyond series, but that is great. I just finished reading issue number 9, and it goes with an anthology of all the Beyond titles, and it kind of takes place after the animated series that we all know and love from the 90s, the Batman Beyond and the Justice League Unlimited. It's kind of the future takes on those characters. And man, the Superman Beyond story they were telling in the last 4 issues with Lex Luthor's daughter and a kryptonite ball coming to Earth, it was fantastic. And Superman, you guys are talking about Superman. This Superman I dug. The Superman Beyond, it started with him kind of out of place in the world. And, he's an older guy now, but he doesn't know where he should be. His secret identity, Clark Kent, has been long gone. All the people he knows and loves about are gone, Lois and all of that. Bruce is kind of still Bruce in his cave, of course. We all know from Terry and Batman Beyond. And the storyline brought him full circle to the end, actually, after having to battle this Luthor's daughter in the future, realizing that he needs to be connected with humanity again. And believe it or not, what does he go out and do? Becomes a firefighter. Anybody read Action Comics? Firefighter? Come on. I thought it was great. It's fantastic, Jim. If you're not reading that, I know you're a Superman guy. Go and check it out. You can get it digitally for 99 cents if you don't want to pick up the Justice League Beyond and Batman Beyond with it. But the Superman Beyond, I told you last week, I'm not a Superman guy, but I dug the way they've been portraying him in Superman Beyond. So definitely a high recommendation for that one, guys. Keep up the great work. Take it easy.
Now I'm like, dang it, I got to go get another book. I hadn't been getting the Beyond stuff because I picked up a couple issues. I was like, you know what? I've got so much reading I'm doing. I'm not going to pick up the titles. And it was one of the DC titles that I'm not getting is the Beyond stuff just because I'm reading everything. And I'm like, I gotta try limiting my reading, try cutting back some, pull back some reading. And that was one of the titles I said I'm not doing. Well, now I'm like, dang it, I gotta go get it. I gotta get my hands on this.
I get that digitally. And how I do my digital purchases, I end up going, I do go to DCP Services site on Wednesdays, just because it's comic book day. So I'll go to their site and I'll click on their link, and the digitals come out daily. Like, they have DC's direct-to-digital releases. It's kind of cool how they do it. They have, like, a different thing come out Monday through Friday every day, it looks like. And, they'll have the Beyond stuff one day every week. They'll have Smallville one day every week. They'll have Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight one day every week. And they're in the smaller chapters that lead to a full issue. But I'm really liking that delivery method. Then they have the Ami girls, the Ami Kami, the stuff that was based on those statues, it's Gray and Palmiotti.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. So, so I don't want to make it sound like when I'm saying that it's like this based on the statues, because initially I only read it because it was Gray and Palmiotti. I'm really digging it. It's a lot of fun. So a lot of what he's saying about the Superman Beyond, I can say about this Ami Kami stuff too. It's really great because they have little minis that initially there was a Power Girl, a Supergirl, a Batgirl, a Wonder Woman, each of the characters. Now it's Ami Kami Girls, where it's like all of them brought together, but they were introduced in their minis that were interconnected as they went through. So it's a neat way to do it. Kind of like what they're doing with Freedom Fighters.
Yeah.
So I like the delivery method, but this digital stuff, I go and get it every Wednesday, and I do it because it's our show sponsor who's been sponsoring us, and it doesn't cost me anything more. But I know the way that the Comixology thing is worked out, they get a kickback from it. So I'm like, they sponsor us, let me take care of them by shopping there. I know that DC's digital, I guess in the last year, somebody sent it and put the link up on our show website, or our show Facebook, that their digital's gone up like some 200%. In the last year, and I think it's because of these direct-to-digital initiatives that they're doing, and the fact that their digital books drop $1 at the end of the month. They go from the initial price to if it's a $2.99 book, it goes to $1.99 after 30 days, and that's a constant. The $3.99 book goes to $2.99. I think that they're grabbing more digital readers that way with that guaranteed drop-off, but. That I know you're getting that stuff then when they do it in print, right? Or the ones that you're selecting, like Smallville, I know you get in print.
Yeah, and I actually ordered that Ami Girls, and I got it the same reason you ordered them, because I saw Gray and Palmiotti, and then the first issue was Amanda Connor artwork. I'm like, oh my god, how I can't pass this up. So I picked up the one. I was like, I saw they continued writing all the other ones. I'm like, well, let's see what this looks like. So I ordered those, sight unseen, and I didn't do any of the digital ordering. But to be honest, you're talking. I think I may go back and I may get the Beyond stuff, go digital. And actually do some digital purchases, and actually, let's go through this and see, maybe I'll pick a couple titles, and I'll stop getting the floppy paper version of these titles, and maybe these titles will be digital titles for me. Maybe it's time I start changing, even though I don't like to say the word change. Well, maybe it's time. I think maybe this is going to be my jumping on point to being more tech oriented and whatnot.
Here's the thing, though. Even if you find that you prefer the paper, the one thing I like about those digital offerings is, let's say you want to try that. You're like, you know what? This Beyond stuff sounds really good to me, but before I take the leap into getting the paper, I want to try it. For 99 cents, like he's saying, you can try an issue of it. If you read it on your computer screen the first time through and you're like, oh, I liked it a lot, but I really want it in paper, you're only out 99 cents. Which I think there's a valid point to what he's saying there. It's a good way, and I think it's good for comics that there's a cheap way for people to try, because they do 99-cent specials all the time, not just for DC. It's across comics. So those specials, I think, for people that are on their mailing lists are sometimes a great way to, for $2 or $3, pick up like 3 issues of maybe different titles you were interested in trying out. And sometimes they do free first issues. Where they'll do like a special where it's like, they really want to promote this series. So you can pick up, it's like 12 issues in. You can pick up the first issue for free and see if it's for you. And how cool is that to try it out that way? And then maybe you go, you know what? I still prefer paper. So you pick up the paper version, but you're not out anything. Or like I said, you're out $1, or $1 or $2 to try something without, having to make that commitment before knowing if the series is your cup of tea. I just think it's a cool way. My hope is with that, I don't necessarily feel this desperate need for paper to overtake digital. I'm for digital to overtake paper, or vice versa. I'm really hoping that both of them work together to promote both. I think there's a comic market for people who want paper. I think there's a comic market for people who want digital. I think there's a comic market for people who want both. And I think that there's a comic market, I still maintain, that is untapped. And I'm glad to hear that DC's seeing success in the digital end. And I'm hoping that when you're seeing, like a 200% increase in the digital end, I'm hoping a lot of those are people like who maybe are reading, just for an example, reading Smallville, who maybe didn't pick up comics before, and then maybe through picking up Smallville are now picking up the Arrow book that they do direct to digital, and some of those other things that they're doing direct to digital. And then maybe they're going to try out the current New 52 version of Superman or something. And this will make them a comic fan digitally. Versus targeting us who are already reading it, because we don't really need the promotion. We're already there looking for this stuff. So that's what I'm hoping comes of a lot of this. I don't know. I just think it's really cool that people talk about digital in that light. When he's talking about costumes, it's funny how I've become... the Green Arrow one is an interesting one because I was a fan of the classic Ollie Queen with the, with the old goatee and stuff like that. I think as I've gotten more connected, we mentioned the Zero issue in particular of Green Arrow. Well, I mentioned that, I should say. You and I were in different places there. For me, the Zero issue was my point where I started to click with the character. Now the costume doesn't bother me. But I did have to get used to the costume, although I like the Smallville version. I like the Arrow television version. And I agree with him that this costume works really well on television. This costume idea, style, things like that works really well on television. Now I find myself liking it a lot. I think especially when you get the story that it's, he's using modern tech and things like that, that his costume is more in tune with the young guy that he is now stepping into this, using modern, goggles and technology and things to do it, while at the same time having really clear nods to, the Green Arrow concept in general. But I don't know, how do you feel about that costume?
See, I've always liked the costume. I always thought it fit, and it was that functionality, just that style that it always matched who, to me, Green Arrow was. And it fit who the character and what he would do and how he would do it. Now, I will co-sign with a lot of people that I do kind of miss the big goatee, and I miss the hood and just the whole that style to him. But I never had any issue with the costume, with who it was, how it was laying out, or any of that. I thought it was a very appropriate present day Green Arrow story. That this is what the guy's going to look like now, and from day one I was like, oh, okay, that looks cool. I like the costume. So and I understand anybody's disagreement or whatnot with just the groove. It just, for some reason, the costume clicked for me. And it's funny, when he was mentioning Arsenal, I was kind of laughing because after we had that whole conversation, I started going through and rereading a lot of books, and I was gonna try to figure out a way to bring up Arsenal, or when we talked Red Hood the next time, just bring up the green trucker hat. I'm like, what's up with the hat, man?
I think it's because he's not a hero and he's lost his way. That's why I guess I didn't have any issue with it. Like, if they were all of a sudden to say that, he's redeemed himself and he's this hero again or something like that, and he was still wearing that hat, I'd be like, what are you doing? But I take it for me to be that, he's the one who most fell to rock bottom and lost his way. And that's why he's so scruffy casual in his superhero appearance. It's funny how, if you put that on Green Arrow, I'd have a major problem. But the fact that it's on Arsenal with where he went, I don't. I think it more magnifies the fact that this is a guy who just really, like I said, scruffy casual. I think it's kind of the way I look at it. He's a scruffy casual hero. It does add to my sense of, I don't look at him as the, this isn't Leon's dad.
And, it's what I have an issue, but I don't have a major, oh my God, because I didn't bring it up the last time we were talking about it. It just didn't click until reread throughs and rethinking about it. But on one hand, the thing that caught me was he's not, if he was in plain clothes, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and had that green hat on, I'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But he's wearing a superhero type, body armor type costume and this green hat. Right. There's got to be something beyond that with that hat. There's got to be some. I'm hoping there's a story about that.
Why? Why does there have to be a story? Why can't it just be that he's wearing the outfit still because of the protection it provides? The hat is because he is basically, in his mind, wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He doesn't consider himself a hero. He just throws the hat, the suits on him because it's functional.
It's kind of like if I were to go to a job interview. I got my suit and thing, and I put on that green coat. I put on a green hat. It doesn't fit the outfit. It doesn't fit what he's doing. It's
exactly. Exactly. He's the guy you want to take aside. No. And wait, first of all, I'm not disagreeing with anything either of you said. I agree with you. But that's the point. The point is he's supposed to be that character that you take aside and go, look, dude, you're trying to, like, if I was teamed up with him, and that's part of what works with that team, is he the face of your team? No. You got to keep him behind the scenes because he looks like he's a mess. And the way he presents himself, the how nonchalant he is and how many times he puts his foot in his mouth are because of that. He is not your stable go-to guy. He's there because Red Hood has, in his own way, I think, seen a little bit of himself in Arsenal. And I don't know how much of him would admit this, but with this guy being a lost soul, maybe he sees an opportunity to maybe redeem his own self and get himself back on a path by helping this guy to get there. He is a mess, and he that hat is ridiculous. But you can't argue with his functionality in the field, and that's why he's still wearing the outfit. I took it that way, but he's a mess. He's an absolute, and it's a mess of an outfit. But I think the mess of an outfit is meant to indicate the mess of a man that he is. So I want to be really clear. I'm not disputing either of you. I agree with you both. But he's a mess of a man. And that's why I like it.
How funny is it that, Jason Todd, Red Hood, is the stable one of the group?
And he's a mess, too. And I like that. I like that he, though, is just a little bit less of a mess now. Yeah. At least theoretically. Steele. It's interesting. I know what he's saying. I'm a big Steele fan. So I get his point. And as I was reading the issue with, Superman and Steele teamed up, I was sitting there going to myself, ooh, I don't know how I like this outfit. But I think for me what works is kind of similar to what I'm saying to Arsenal. It's when John Henry Irons is handing Superman the card and saying, I don't see myself as a hero, but maybe there's something I can do with this Steelworks. I think the idea behind the concept was to show that he's not heading down the path that we saw before where he's going to put on the mask and become Steel and become a superhero. He's instead going to use that technology in a different way and be more of be in the public eye. So there is no mask. That's, just the suit was there for functionality, for teaming up with Superman, but he's not heading down that path. If he becomes a hero and they start using him in that role, because that journey they have him out in the back, I'm wondering if maybe, down the road we'll see him eventually be Steel and go in that role. I would like to see it morph into having a mask or having a helmet again, because I liked that look. I didn't dislike it, but there was definitely that part of me that was like, if he was to move forward and become a hero, I would like some tweaks to it, definitely, for that purpose. So I agree with him to a certain extent on that, but I liked it in the issue. Yeah. At the end, when the card was handed out, that was the part where I was like, okay, it makes... But it wasn't until the card was handed out that it clicked for me, that I was okay with it.
Yeah, I would only like to see a helmet added if it's needed. Like if he's going into space and he needs it's kind of like the Batman adjustments to the costume as needed. I would like to see Steel put on a helmet if he's going to be, exchanging blows with somebody. Yeah, he should have some head protection. He should have something that kind of, adds to the armor, adds to the, the strength of it. Or if he's going up into space, he needs something there, or, underwater and whatnot. Just, modifications for the environment. But for me, I didn't really, when I saw the costume, when I saw him in, I was like, oh, that's cool. That looks neat. That, it's another Steel costume, and I liked it. I had no issues when I was looking at it. I was just thinking, the only thing I was thinking is he better not take a headshot. But I think that kind of stuff when I look at any costumes. When I I'm looking at functionality of a costume and functionality of a real world. If I was in that, what would I have? What would I do?
Yeah, agreed.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Jim, let's jump in and talk Superman number 13. I think we'll kind of casually talk about all three of these titles as we go along, but the focal point is this one, because this is the prelude to this Hell on Earth, which I loved this training sequence in the beginning, because we've we've had in Action Comics this idea of, Superman being rebooted and his power set growing gradually. He couldn't fly at first, then he could fly. And I like the idea that his battle with Hellspawn in the first annual really gave him this sense of unleashing his total power, but also being beaten by somebody else. I like that. There's a reason for Superman to step up his game, to want to train more, to try and learn more about his powers, what makes him super powerful, and the sun and its relationship with that, and can he go beyond what he already has? Can he be something more than what we've already seen? That is something I've always enjoyed in Superman storytelling, going back to Silver Agey stuff. This idea that Superman doesn't know his limits, and that those limits can grow over time. Superman can become something beyond that. There's something about that makes the character more relatable to me. The fact that he doesn't know his limits, and that, he's not this omnipotent character. He can be beaten, and he can be thrown around. I mean, they've got to be these great, big, powerful beings, but there's something about this guy. I'm really enjoying the rebooted Superman as a person. In and out of the costume, because I like Clark Kent. And I like the fact that when we see him in these moments, Clark's still there.
Yeah,
that's working for me. I like him.
I like these cool moments between him and the Doctor.
Me too.
It was just, again, that personal moment, and just I liked the little bit of banter and the fact that he had one drop of perspiration, and she's like, "Hold on, let me just take this here," and he's like, "I swear, I don't remember the last time." He was just generally excited over being exhausted about sweating, about these quote unquote normal things that we all take for granted and we all do without even thinking about. I love the fact that you got that from Clark, and you got to see that moment, and you got to see that interaction between these two. He needs more people in his life that he can be he can be Superman, but not Superman. He needs to have those interactions. And that's the thing I always loved about him and Lois together, is because he couldn't, let down the guard and let down the disguise, let down the concept and what he keeps hidden from people. He can be open, and he can have these kind of conversations with them, with her. I like the fact that there is somebody kind of in Clark's life that he can do this, and I'm hoping this is the beginning of something between these two that will get more of this confidant moments between them.
I like that his interactions with people in those situations, though, can be awkward. Whereas there's that hint at, you're truly one of the only people I can trust, but the way that he presents it is in a way that she takes as, if I didn't know him better, I'd think that was a threat. And he even acknowledges, boy, that felt like I was saying it this way when I really didn't mean it that way, and I hope it didn't come off that way. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that he does have to know that he is dealing with humans. He's dealing with other people, and there is a disconnect, but there is a kind of a visitor. Ouch! I grew up my whole life on this planet, on a farm, no less. So there is that personal connection, but there is a disconnect. He does see that, like, what? I'm not human. I am different than everybody else, and I've got to remember that when I'm interacting, when I'm dealing with this.
I like when he went up to the sun.
Yeah.
That sense
Get a little
of
juice.
well, but also that sense of, for him, thinking about how, the sound with the hearing, the super hearing, just being that in tune to everything going on in the world. The roar of the solar flares for him is more of a quiet, peaceful moment than living on Earth. That really stood out for me and struck me. That being somewhere peaceful, like I just kind of like to lay back here and kind of collect the rays because, it's going to charge me up and all that, but I got to go back and pay the rent. And that reality of, yes, there's that duality where Superman has to have that other life. I love the suit. I really want to clarify that because this was something I had a lot of trepidation with. But this idea, like when he's working out there and he's being tested, that the suit can be brought back to just the symbol. There's something I really like the way the Kryptonian suit is being utilized here. And as a storytelling element, it's everything they said it was going to be. And I'm thrilled with that because I was really deathly afraid I was going to hate it. Because the initial shots I saw of it, I was like, ooh, I don't know. And, why does Superman need armor and stuff like that? The story of it really, and the way they're using it, really has grown on me to the point where I can generally say I am a fan now of the suit. in a way that I never thought I was going to be. It's just something that I thought like was interesting to mention. But when he shows up back at his apartment and Jimmy's there with a girl, dude, we got to come up with we got to come up with some kind of code, a tie on the door, whatever we got to do, so we know when something's going on here. Superman taking a roommate. I love that that's a complication. There's something that fits with that, right? Because Jimmy needed a spot and he wants to be a good guy, but that becoming a major complication when you are Superman and you have to leave the place, that I thought was great.
Yeah, and it does crack me up though that we do have a different Jimmy Olsen, and I've said before I like this Jimmy a little bit. I like this Jimmy better. I don't want the golly gee willikers. No, this is we got Jimmy Olsen getting busy here.
What golly gee willikers Jimmy Olsen were you reading though? Because I don't know. You've always used that as your throw-to, and even in the previous continuity, you were always amazed by the fact that it wasn't that. Because the golly gee willikers, there was a golly gee willikers Jimmy Olsen, but that's back in the 70s.
And I think I'm locked into that was always Jimmy Olsen, even though I didn't really read that Jimmy Olsen, but for some reason I always have that locked in my head. It wasn't until we got introduced to, I didn't read the stories with Olsen Bug, where the final crisis and just seeing Jimmy kind of step up and be that it's the whole Jimmy Olsen must die, that whole story arc that was playing out there, that I actually saw Jimmy Olsen being not this kid. I saw him actually being mature, being an adult about it, being a photojournalist. So for some reason, I always locked it in my head that was always Jimmy Olsen before, even though I never really read that Jimmy Olsen.
I think, from media more than anything else, you probably got that. Now, I love the bits with Perry, Lois, and Clark.
Yeah.
Where we get to see a very strong Lois Lane who's in command of her position. Perry kind of, in many ways, being the objective observer of the ouch moments where Clark's a moral character. And I always want to believe that about Clark. I love the morality of Superman. That's got to stand up for me. That's why later on with Morgan Edge, when he says truth, justice, and the American way, it means something. Because we see the conviction gradually build to that moment. He's about news, and it's a truth of our society nowadays. True, objective journalism is not around the way that it was. It really is more of the people are looking for the buzz story, your high society, interesting stories like that people are into. But the tried and true journalism has a hard time making the front page. Clark saying that and bringing that part up, and that being a part of his frustrations and what he's doing at the Planet. Because the role of Clark Kent at the Daily Planet always, as a reader of the series that I enjoyed, was him using his job at the Daily Planet to be an agent of change, reporting the stories that nobody else would report, getting to the crusp of things that nobody else would dare to, even though there are threats. They were getting the truth out there to the public, making them aware of the things that were going on. That was their attacks on Lex Luthor. A lot of times came from that. We're publishing the truth about Luthor that nobody would dare, even when Luthor owns the place, from time to time or something like that, and was putting financial pressure on there. There was something about that worked. Or when he was the president, for example. So, that kind of stuff has always been things I've found interesting. In this world, Clark calling Lois on where things have gone, and Perry explaining the realities, though, to Clark, that, hey, we're a business. We have to make money, otherwise we can't afford to publish those stories you're mentioning. And, Perry, coming to the realization of, this is our world. Even though I don't like it, this is our world that we're in. It just stood up for me as something that I really enjoyed, because when Clark eventually faces Morgan Edge, he thinks that more of the people that he works with are like him, when the rest of them, even if they do feel the way he does, they can't step forward because they need the paycheck.
Yeah.
Again, a reality situation that I think we all see that at our respective careers. We have that moment that Clark's at. And to do what he did, he's doing what most of us just can't do. And there's something empowering about that.
Well, here's the thing. I've actually experienced those moments where, and I've been the guy who, after he's like, who's with me? Does a You start looking down, start typing. Hey, wow, look at that interesting speck on the wall. That I never noticed that speck was there before. Oh, did you say something? I didn't hear you. I've been that guy, and it's it is a tough position where you get these people who stand out there who are saying this is wrong, and you want to be the guy like, yeah, I'm with you. Let's go to the unemployment line together. Let's end our career right now. And that's a tough spot. It's a very difficult spot, especially you got to pick your battles. Now,
amen.
Clark's fighting for truth, justice, the American way. He's fighting for the truth. And yes, that is very noble. But the way he's going about the fight, I can guarantee 100% I wouldn't be standing up with him. I hate saying that, and I don't hope no one thinks I'm any less of me for this. But I'll be honest with you. This point in time is not the correct place to have this fight. It's not the correct time or the correct way to have this fight. Now, I 100% concur with him. I agree with what he's saying. That and one of the things that does sicken me about the media is the fact that it is this sensational journalism with with newsreaders who didn't do any of their own research, who are just reading what's up there, who are taking research that was done probably by some unpaid intern, or they're taking it from the wire that who knows where that came from, or just the lack of actual journalists reporting the news they researched and reporting the news they're coming that they have found. And it's just that lack of the journalistic integrity that we have nowadays really does anger and annoy me. So I completely agree with his sentiment, but right here on the news floor in front of Morgan Edge, that's not the time to do it. And we see that, there's only one person who agrees with him, and she doesn't even step forward initially. It's after he leaves, that's when she steps forward, and that's when she quits. But, right as he's standing there, all those people, the ones adjusting a picture on the wall, that's the one that kind of cracked me up, because like, oh, wow, I never noticed this picture was off the line. Let me just fix it, right? Take this opportunity to fix it. And this is a very human, natural way of handling it. And yeah, I applaud Clark. I applaud him for what he's doing, and I would be one of those guys who would not support him and then feel like a complete piece of garbage for not doing it immediately afterwards. But I would hold on to the fact that I still got a job. Sorry.
At places I've worked, in my life, I've had situations where I tend to pick my battles. Really step up for the things that I think are really important. I'm not saying I do it on the Clark level. I don't. But really, you could get very nitpicky, I think, at any job. I think, you've seen that. I think everybody listening to this has seen that. But I'm not afraid to go and speak up. But when I speak up, I try to be sure that I do. Actually, I don't do it the way Clark does, because you try to do it in a way where you're not burning the bridge. Clark burnt the bridge. Clark blew up the bridge. I would not do it the way Clark did, and I can totally admit that. I think what he did is very gutsy, because he says it in a way maybe we'd probably all like to. But if you want to keep your job, you just can't do that. And I think at this point he doesn't care about keeping the job. He cares about making the point. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's assuming that he's to keep the job because he thinks everyone's going to stand with him and he's going to be like the leader.
Hey, if you're going to have a revolution, if you're going to overthrow, you got to make sure you got the people right there with you. They're ready to fire. You can't go into it assuming, everybody thinks this, they're going to follow me. No, you got to have a little bit more planning. And it's when do you choose to take the shot? When do you actually fire that first, volley? And it's funny because I feel terrible even saying this, because I'm like, I completely agree with everything he's saying, but I got to be honest. I know me in this situation, I would be more worried about losing the job. Now, if I was in one of those positions where I didn't worry about losing the job, or, you always talk about what are you going to do when you leave, or when you're getting ready to leave, that's, the situation. Like, that's a completely different story. But even then, you kind of don't want to burn the bridge. You don't want to, the news industry, the newspaper industry, there's not a lot of openings. There's not a lot of areas. And, what's going to happen next? Where's Clark going to go? What's he going to do?
See, here's where I would, and it's sad, because I agree with everything you're saying. I would probably get mad at him here, though, because the way I like to handle things is I like to handle them more diplomatically. So by him saying this now, it would give me no opportunity to handle this diplomatically. To be able to say something about something like this. Hey, I would be more realistic about the state of things and try to say, hey, can we try to get more human interest stories in there? Or, hey, can we try to get, more actual news stories in the section B or something like that of the newspaper? I would probably approach it that way, as saying, that they would probably target a readership that's lapsed, that's looking for tried and true traditional news. And I would go that route with it instead of derailing what Morgan Edge is clearly looking at as his bread and butter. So I would try to use that way to maybe get more of those stories that Clark's looking for into the paper, which wouldn't be the way Clark wants it handled. Clark wants those back on the front page. But I would at least do something to try and find a happy medium where we're getting more of that content back in. So I feel like I can do more of that content, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we got you. Yeah. It's picking when and where and how you do it.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that Clark even kind of beats himself up over it, like, oh man, what did I do? Am I exhausted? Am I upset about the stuff going on in Lois? And even he's now thinking on, what am I going to do now? What's the plan? And then when Kat quits, he's like, hey, you got to support your kid. I'm assuming because he said support, I'm assuming he was going to go with the child, because I don't know if we've actually introduced the kid in this universe.
I'm guessing that's what it's going to be. I don't know. I don't know that either. But I really liked how that conversation went down, where he was looking at that her situation's different than his. So, I don't know. I really like that situation. That actually makes him feel more lonely, though, because he's got to basically tell her, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Because of that. And that makes him kind of a island unto himself, so to speak. And I like that. Because I felt that way before.
It's funny, when the last issue we were talking about Clark and him getting a badge and getting recognition from the government and stuff like that, and the other thing I always thought with Superman would be a neat story is, what if he just went back to the farm, and he's Clark Kent of Kent Farm, and then because the world is completely interconnected. And don't tell me he couldn't get a supercomputer from Bruce, hide it out on the farm, and just so he'd have complete access and knowledge of everything going on. So he lives this quiet life on the farm in Kansas, and then as this natural disaster pops up, he's over there. Or this disaster over here, he's over there. And it's just because he can...
But you got to remember, he's not looking at Clark Kent as being a throwaway. He's looking at that as being the life that keeps him connected with the world. If you go and hide out at the farm, you're disconnecting yourself from the world.
True.
So, agreed with everything you're saying, that would give him that opportunity to do everything you're saying. So you're right. But the fundamental purpose that it defeats from him is his interconnectivity with actual people on a day-to-day basis, which I think is an essential role of Clark Kent for him. Because we've seen the Superman that disconnects himself. Actually, the phone call that we just had was talking about a Superman who had previously disconnected himself, who's now finding his way back as a fireman to reconnecting himself. So I think there's something cool about all that, that being his role. And I always liked that about Superman, that he chooses to keep a secret identity to connect with the world. It's a reversal of what Batman does. And I think there's something to that that's fundamentally Superman that I really think makes sense to the character, that I really enjoy. But also, I like that is a very hard thing to maintain for him, because I think that's a cool part of it too.
Yeah. Now this Kryptonian dragon dinosaur or whatever this big thing is, that was a cool fight sequence for me. I really liked just seeing it, and throughout the whole thing.
Beautiful. That shot of first of all.
God, yeah.
I want to. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm going to let you go with your point because I want to make some point leading up to it. So I'm cutting you off for a second. I wholeheartedly apologize, but the artwork where he first sees it, that look on his face of shock, and then you actually see that beautiful page. I thought both the shot of him looking at it and the shot of him on the that dragon on the building were both stunning examples of how much I'm really enjoying the artwork in this. Like the super suit really worked for me in that sequence, and then the dragon really worked for me in that sequence. And I'm sorry I cut you off, but please continue, because you couldn't go where you were going with it without taking a look at that gorgeous artwork leading up to it. I think book looks very pretty.
Oh, yeah, big time. And this is something that, again, this is a a combination of the story, being told, and the physical presence. That's what we're looking at. And this is that meshing of when I have a creative team where the writer and the art team really come together and really gel for me, and it adds to it. The fact that what I'm seeing, what I'm getting visually, is matching what kind of magnitude I should have in my head. And this was just, I love the fact that he's playing this out and he's duking with this. And you can even get those moments where he's like, I feel bad for doing this, but there's a lot of innocent lives at stake. I gotta think about the people. I gotta think about, something else. This is obviously not from around here, but you know what? I got a innocent building, innocent people. There's massive destructions on the buildings. There's a whole lot of chaos and whatnot going on that we got to figure this out.
And this leads to the bit where, the whole battle there leads to this bit where Kara's saying, you lied to me. You said there was nothing that survived from Krypton, but this creature's here. And then they're being looked on by this being that's there. Which, if it turns out to be Bizarro, that would make sense that this dragon's then a Bizarro clone of what was the dragon from his world, right?
I guess. I don't know now. I'm not, part of me does question the whole Bizarro thing if this isn't, because, well, again.
I said if. And I genuinely mean if. I don't think I've, nailed that, but it's the backward symbol and the scars on his face that you saw in Superboy. Then you see the character, there's scars on his face there. Does that mean it's Bizarro? I don't know. And if it isn't, I'm thrilled. I find the character fascinating, whoever this character is. There's an enigmatic thing about the whole thing. I know I butchered that totally. But I like those enigma-type characters. The ones that just kind of make you go, wow, what's his whole deal? And I'm interested. So if it's not Bizarro, I could care less. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And every time that Kara's around, I do like the fact that she's his cousin, and cousins is always in parentheses because she's still not 100% certain that that's Kal-El. That's baby Kal-El she's talking to.
Which is great, and I wonder what it'll take for her to realize that. I think this Krypton trip will be what finally maybe hits that.
I think this is it. I think this is finally going to get this whole story, this whole Hel-El or Heel or however they're pronouncing it. It's definitely going to be the final piece to the puzzle, and actually maybe bring them together, and maybe bring bring Superboy into the fold, and we'll start getting the super family, which I'm definitely looking forward to. And I'm wondering, the fact that it's El is this creature's, this guy's name. Is he a relationship to the House of El? Or is
he's
that
Bizarro.
just happened to be his name?
Yeah, he's Bizarro. That would be his relationship. He's a clone. El.
Yeah.
That's what I'm taking it as.
And again, definitely this could be a new way they're handling Bizarro, because the Bizarro I always knew didn't have the same mental factions that Superman had. Well, this one definitely looks like he has, some, he's all there. He's, not talking Bizarro speak, not talking, goofy or crazy or weird. So this could be this version of Bizarro. I don't know.
Or a clone of Dad.
Or a clone of Dad, yeah.
I don't know. And the clone thing, I've got to clarify. I'm throwing it out that's rock solid. I don't know. But it's the more evidence that's presented, it feels that way to me. And I'm a happy camper whenever I'm swerved, too. So it's one of those things, if I'm right, I'll be doing a happy dance in one way. If I'm wrong, I'll be doing a happy dance at the greatness of the surprise. What I love about this is I'm caring about Superman, this title in particular, in a way I've enjoyed the book throughout. So I don't want to throw the creators under a bus who created this book prior to this run, because I've enjoyed the book. I think with the first year, it's been a feeling out process for me as a fan with this new take on Superman. And I know it's still, it's still Superman, but I mean, still, it's been a reboot and stuff like that. So a lot of the creators that for the last year have been working on this book have had that kind of fan in me feeling out, is this my Clark or not? There's been a lot to love. There's been a lot that I've liked. And there's been a lot that I've been like, I don't know yet. And I think that's normal in a feeling out process. There's never been a time where I've wanted to dump this book. I've always enjoyed it. So the creators have done what they're supposed to do. They've kept me wanting to read. I have to say with this creative team, though, This book is no longer they've kept me wanting to read. I agree with your comments earlier. I have a hard time when Superman comes out. Like this issue, when it came out, was my first read.
Yeah.
For this book to jump up from being a book that I eventually get to being a first read says a lot about the quality of what the creative team's doing and where my head's at now with this book. And that has been since the first annual. When that first annual hit, something just clicked with me. I got to see what this creative team plans to do. Then the Zero issue came out. Then this issue. They're just the Zero issue after that, it was like a home run. And then when this issue came out, I was like, whoa, I've got to read this right away. This book, as long as this team keeps delivering like this, is going to be that book again where I'm going to it. I love that Superman feels that way for me. It hasn't. And that's great. That's the way Superman should feel. And that's one of the goals. And I hope a lot of people are having that experience, because what was one of the goals with doing this New 52 revamp was hopefully to take some of these titles that hadn't been in that place for readers and hopefully pump them back up to that place again. Superman was one of their big targets. So this year is critical for Superman, I think, on whether or not this was a good idea. I think having Superman and Action Comics over the next year and then this new Man of Steel book, these will be the titles that will be deciding whether or not in this year of 2012 to 2013 especially with the new book launching with Snyder and Lee, that are really going to be deciding factors if this was a good move. Sales numbers from Superman is really going to decide that, in the family of books.
Yeah.
And I think this year is going to be a big sales year for it. And I think that Man of Steel title, I'm not throwing these books under the bus, but I think that's going to be one that's going to generate some readership too. I think there's going to be big things happening in the Superman universe. This crossover, though, for me is, I'm really looking forward to it. Because that ending in the issue with those two face off with that character looking over on him, that has me super excited for I'm in for the next issue. I will read that first because I was very disappointed when the issue ended because I wanted more.
Yeah. And it's, again, I'm sitting here, I'm nodding my head, just yes, right along with you. And the thing that gets me, that I'm really, really thinking future stories with Superman. Where's this going to go? What about this? And just in our conversation, I've been throwing out, well, what about this idea? What about this idea? What about this? And while I was excited, I was reading and I was really going, man, this is kind of cool. I like this. This is a good Superman story. All right. I wasn't thinking, what about this? What about that? I wasn't in that mindset. I was doing that with the Bat books. I was doing that with the Green books. But I wasn't doing that with the Superman books. Well, now I'm doing that. Now Superman was the first read from this past week. Well, Action Comics was. It wasn't, Superman 14 didn't come out. I saw Action Comics. I'm like, oh, okay, let's pull this out. Let's read this. It beat all other titles that were there, for this past week. So, Superman is the Superman title. Superman, boy, girl, and action, and then eventually Man of Steel. This is a number one read. This is a top-of-the-stack read for me now.
I want to correct something that I said earlier. I was commenting on the artwork from Sammy Basri, and I'm probably butchering the last name of that, who's the regular artist. On the annual on the Zero issue for Supergirl, it was it's Mahmud Asrar was the artist on that one. It was a guest artist, I think, for the Zero issue. And I want to shout out because I really enjoyed the artwork greatly on the Zero issue. When I was looking at 13, I'm like, wait, this is clearly different artwork. And that's when we're back to Sammy Basri, who I'm really enjoying. And that's the guest artist, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess the one who was on the Zero issue might be the regular artist. And I really enjoyed him. Basically, the bottom line is I enjoyed the artwork on both issues. They were both different, but I really enjoy Supergirl's artwork. I'm enjoying the theme, the style. More importantly, it's funny how I'm enjoying the color tone on that book. It's got a little edge to it, which fits the character right now. I think she's got a little edge to her. But she hasn't gone to that dark edge, which I really don't want to see with Supergirl. You have to keep her to a certain level where she's angry, but she's not unlikable. And we have human moments with her. I don't want her to go back to that unlikable Supergirl. My big problem with that one, I know I reference that a lot, when they first introduced the previous Supergirl, I really enjoyed the introduction to her. I enjoyed her initial phase. But then the unlikable Supergirl, the bratty Supergirl, went on too long. It wasn't that there was a bad concept. It was a concept that it was like a Saturday Night Live skit that sometimes, I'm a huge Saturday Night Live fan, so this isn't me knocking Saturday Night Live, but sometimes Saturday Night Live has skits that just go too long. That you hit your punchline about a minute ago. That's when your skit should have ended. Supergirl as the bratty Supergirl had an extra minute moment like kids do sometimes. And I think that like this is a great example of how you've got a Supergirl who's angry but likable. Because, having her with the Silver Banshee moments and stuff like that in this title where, she uses the situation to reconnect with friends was something that pulled at the heartstrings for me. And you need those moments with Supergirl. I want to like her. I want to connect to her, even though it's clear that she's adversarial with Superman because she doesn't trust him. They've got a great balance going with the character right now that I'm finding interesting because I like her. You got to like her.
I love this battle that she had, and especially the resolution of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, I'm thinking, okay, what's she going to do and just how she's going to beat this guy. And she really doesn't beat him up. She has the station do it, the sanctuary take care of it. The ship, you listening? You always neutralize them. Boom, done. I love the fact that it wasn't a throw down, punch him. I'm going to use my combination. I'll do the frost burst, then the heat, and then punch him, and this and that. No, she's like, take care of him, done. I thought that was just an absolutely wonderful, way to handle it. And again, it's not your quote-unquote traditional way a superhero would do it with beating up the bad guy, but she's not a traditional superhero. Yeah. She is a Kryptonian citizen who's on Earth trying to figure everything out. She's not a superhero. She's a person who happens to have superhuman powers, who happens to keep getting attacked by people. And I love the fact that we're seeing her deal with this. Her again. It's her birth, it's the creation of the character. It's this the first year has been building this solid building block of the character. And I'm so glad the way they did this that now I have a really strong connection, really strong passion about this character.
And that's something that I really enjoyed about the character is that I do feel like I'm developing a passion for this new version of the character. And I think that's a key for me because I was digging her so much before. If you're going to revamp a character, you've got to keep... I keep mentioning likability. I find her likable. I find her vulnerability likable. Like this moment in the battle you're mentioning that was so terrific. I love that in the battle, it wasn't about her kicking butt without having any vulnerability. It was that she had to use her smarts. She's Supergirl. She's got these intense superpowers and all that, but this guy was more powerful than her. She had to get clever in her dealing with him. I like that the super characters are smart, too.
Yeah.
And that they have villains that can really do a number on them. That, to me, makes them far more interesting than if they're omnipotent. I don't want to see that. That doesn't work for me. You've got to add a vulnerability in there that makes it... But without losing what makes them uniquely super as well. You still got to make sure they feel super. That's a great and hard-to-find balance that I think they've done really well.
Yeah, and it's cool seeing the smug villain get it in the end. That was absolutely wonderful because he plays the audio, recordings from the crystal, and he's like, "Oh, that's got a sting," and you really want to punch this guy. You really you're just a little smarmy, And the fact that she does get the app on him, she does seal him up there, and she's like, "You said you don't need to eat or sleep, or you don't need any air anymore. Well, so you're not dead in there, and maybe you can still hear me. And when you start being nice." Maybe then I'll let you out. And that just, for me, was just a great punishment for this guy.
I agree. That was something where she's like, I needed that time to kind of regroup and everything. I love that the Sanctuary feels different than the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really important. I like that they're giving her a base. I like that it feels different because it should. I like that her understanding of Kryptonian tech should feel different than Clark's. But yet we see Clark clearly making great use of Kryptonian tech, but then his own little spin on everything. Yeah. Which there should be a distinction between the two, and I really like that. I can't wait to see the two eventually being friends.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what happens with Clark's fortress and her sanctuary. If there's ever going to be any communication between the two of them, or if when things start getting better between them, if the fortresses will start, having friendships, camaraderie, or a sharing of minds, because they're both sentient, intelligent creatures.
Mom didn't kill Dad, right?
No, Mom used that blaster that he created blaster. That was non-lethal.
But it looks like, for the listener from the outside, that there's a possibility that she did some real harm to him.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, because if you think back to the Zero issue, when she sees the gun, she's like, "Hey, what's this?" He goes, "Hey, it's non-lethal." But when she zaps him, he's hurting pretty bad. And on the tapes here, it wouldn't capture the after effect where they show those two standing and he's okay. They would just show the initial blast and show him, ugh, like he's getting ready to die. So she's, in her mind, she's thinking, "Hey, my parents, my mom just shot my dad. She just killed." So and again, it adds to the whole with her being on Krypton. Maybe she's going to go there to try to save dad and not have him get killed by mom.
I like at the end that cliffhanger where she sees what Clark's fighting. And this leads to her going to then visit it. With that impossible thing that she sees that, is clearly a piece of her old world of Krypton. I like that. That it's something, the sense of disbelief was something that I really enjoyed.
Oh, yeah. And, she's just a great character. And I'm really glad. I actually really like this Supergirl. This is, a neat character, a neat story, and a neat way of handling the character. And, it's,
Talk about a fish out of water. We got to talk about Superboy. Number 13. Because I'm really enjoying this book. And what I like about this book is his interactions with Teen Titans and with Ravagers. I think it's a book that really kind of touches on a lot of elements in the DC universe and is doing it really well with a character who clearly does not know proper behavior sometimes. Like, he's stolen this money, but he's okay but he thinks it's okay because he's really just borrowing it.
I have every plans of returning it. Come on. Of course it's okay. No, it's not. It's stealing.
But you got this police officer from the future, the Jocelyn Lure, who is involved with him, and I really like how that whole thing plays out. She's trying to put a leash on him, but then through discussion and realizing that they have common goals, or her realizing that she can utilize some of his interests to her advantage, they come to a tentative agreement, very tentative, where he feels like he can trust her because he's longing to trust somebody, but watches it carefully. She, on the other hand, is looking at I want to do the right thing here, but then I also have my mission to deal with. I love that kind of story because you can see where there's 1 minute we're friends, the next minute we're not. It's convenient for me to trust you here and to fulfill my agreement because maybe later there'll be a reason that it pays off. Those type of setups in comics I think are just absolutely great because it makes sense why that relationship would be tentative. And I don't know, there was something that I really just ate up in this whole issue.
Oh, big time. Yeah, it's one of the things that, again, I like the exploration that Connor has, that Connell has about figuring out what is humanity, what is right, and those moments when he's just with the heiress, and he goes, "Hey, you need money? Here's all this money. There, it's solved." And she doesn't go and pay off the bookie. She doesn't pay off the people she owes money. She goes on a shopping spree because, hey, I got this money now. I'm okay. You said you needed it for something else. We'll deal with that. And it's just that mindset and that style. And he's like, what is this? I don't get this. And when the bad guys show up at him, and again, they're going to throw down with him. So he's like, fine, you want to fight? I'll fight. Boom. And it's, again, that whole clone programming that Harvest is doing that, he loses his temper again. And he really just unleashes the full power on them. And, we know from the Zero issues that's really not his fault. But will he be able to fight it? Maybe. But this is something that he's going to have to work on. This is something he's going to have to deal with. And I loved seeing just, again, he's a different Superboy than what I'm used to in the pre-Flashpoint. This is a different type of hero than what's normally out there. And Olsen reacting to it, going, hey, yeah, there's a super over here, but he ain't like Superman. We got something going on here. There's something just not right with this guy. And again, this is a pro-Superman guy saying something's not right here. And I love the fact that they're looking at him differently and they're thinking about him differently. It's, you would have to say this isn't quote unquote normal.
I like how that Kiva entered into Superboy's mind and is having these after effects afterwards. And a lot of that, when you take a look at what his training's been and what's been done to his head, you can see why that would do that to this person. Because he's a mess.
Yeah, big time.
I like the case he makes for himself where he's trying to live a normal life. You know, he's like, I haven't had one of those. I'm trying to live one. And she's making the point, but this is what passes at normal for us. And there's a powerful argument there between the two of them that I thought was really, really honest and great. I feel this book is really, really down to earth. And Tom DeFalco did a great book called Spider-Girl. And I really like him on Superboy because I think we're getting that same kind of storytelling where you got a Superboy that's very likable. Like, I'm really starting to like this guy. And they did a really good job of understanding you make him, like, it's okay to make him unlikable early on where, you know, he's doing these things because he's like this drone. But the more that he becomes human, the more he connects with the world, the more he wants to step outside of his training and what he's been kind of blocked into. And you can't help but root for him. And that's the key. If he has missteps here and there, if you like him, you'll still root for him. If you don't like him, that's not going to happen. You're going to really lose readers fast. And this book's, I think's done a really great job of making a character who's had a nice balance, and he's distinctive from Superman and Supergirl.
Yeah, and it was funny because we talk about the connectability of the super books. The connectability of Superboy, Teen Titans, and Ravengers have been another just, you know, excitement for me then, because Teen Titans I'm digging, Ravengers I'm digging, and then when you have Superboy interacting with both teams, I'm like, oh, that is cool. He fits into with both worlds. It makes sense for him to be doing this type of stuff. Plus, he's got his solo stuff that is, again, him. You know, this is, you gotta have the hero outside of the costume. You gotta have this kid who's trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out his place in the world, trying to find what is quote unquote normal. And, you know, he'll never have a normal life. He'll never have the 9-to-5 job like Clark has, but he will have something. And I'm curious to see when that happens, seeing how that goes, where it's going to finally lay out. And I want to see him give the money back. But again, right now, that's not top priority in his life. And I don't think it should be top priority in his life. To him, it's just money. It's just, I'll give it back. Yeah, you know, eventually. You know, right now I need it, so eventually I'll figure out something else. Or he's not probably even thinking eventually I'll get a job. He's thinking, yeah, I'll get it back. Yeah, no problem.
And that's one of the things I like about him, because his lack of where he's been raised and the environment he's been raised in, that would be something where he would not understand that concept of the world and why people would be so irritated by it. I think that's true and real.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it was funny because so far the police officer is the second person he's dealt with who's like, what are you doing? And he still hasn't gotten a grip that, you know, this is illegal. Because of the one Teen Titans issue, we see him with Bunker. And Bunker's like, what are you doing? You can't have this. And he's like, oh my God, you know, and he's like, what? You know, that was the first introduction to that, you know, to counter it's nothing. He's like, hey, I needed money, so I went into the bank and I took it. Well, you can't take it. Why not? It's illegal. Oh boy. And he's like, okay, we'll figure out that one later. We'll figure that one out later. And this is again his second time dealing with somebody, and he still hasn't caught on that you can't do this. This is illegal. So I'm gonna be curious to see that get resolved. I want to know when and how he gives the money back and what happens after that. But again, that's something that's going to come down the line. It's going to be within the year, maybe. You know, maybe, who knows? I don't know when it's going to play out, but eventually it will, because they've made too much of a point of it. And I'm curious to see that play out. But it's a non-superhero moment I'm curious to see play out.
I like the relationship with Dallas. That was something that really stood out for me in this that I found very, very enjoyable. Is she someone worthy of trust or not? He gives her the money for her rent, but then she uses the money to go shopping.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very different world for him as far as understanding potential responsibility or lack of responsibility in that case. And that was something that I found very enjoyable as well in the story, was that I could see how this guy would still be questioning things.
Well, and I see him trusting her with info and she betraying him. And not even just betraying it maliciously, but probably betraying it for, you know, personal gain or because it's just, you know, way it is, put everything out there on Twitter and whatnot, and get little pics of her with Superboy. And it's, you know, because you see her notice, hey, Cutie's a meta. oh, he's one of those metas. And so, she's thinking about, in my head, I'm figuring she's thinking about how she could use that maybe. Or maybe she's just thinking that's neat and let's see, it's another new plaything or another toy. I'm still trying to get my hands on her. I don't know if she's completely malicious and evil or if she's just one of those rich kids who, doesn't see a lot of the consequences of their actions.
I don't see him as being naive. I see him as not understanding the ways of the world, but I also see him as being skeptical. So I don't see him giving her all this information. I see one of those situations where he keeps this tentative trust that he has with her, and it potentially getting him into a situation where he gets into trouble. But I don't see him revealing something that would stab him in the back, because I don't think he's at that place. I don't think he trusts the world. So I guess but I do see I see half of what you're saying. I see it potentially being a situation where I've made friends with you, and it's going to lead to me what's going on right now. I think we're going to see more of this kind of stuff where now all of a sudden he's being assaulted by these guys that are out to get Dallas as the quote-unquote protector.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be the kind of thing where I think we're already seeing the naive side of him with Bone Smasher and Streak.
Yeah.
Is going to be more what we see with him.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we'll get that kind of stuff, but I think we're going to see Dallas keeping him around because of guys like that after her. Because of
Agreed.
That.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just don't see him revealing tons of information to her. I see him keeping a tentative relationship where they get closer, but yet it's more this not coincidental stuff. We get to see more of, this type of thing where he's being pulled into situations because he's friends with Dallas and not understanding how she's a pain in the neck.
Yeah. Well, he also doesn't know he should have a secret identity. He doesn't have one. He's just Connor. He's just Con-El. He's just Con. He's Superboy. He doesn't have this secret. He doesn't know he should have one. He has it where he covers over his outfit because less people are yelling and attacking him, but it's not quote-unquote secret identity yet.
What's interesting is during this fight sequence we see the Bizarro-like, whatever that is, whether it's Bizarro or not, in the dark with Kryptonian symbols, right? In that ship that Elsewhere?
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on there. But that whole fight sequence, while that's going on, you see Superboy really loses temper and he's attacking the police and making a bad name for himself, which is in turn making a bad name for Superman because of his looks and the connection between that obviously Lois is picking up that he looks like a younger version of him. And this is something, what else is Superman keeping from us if he's keeping this? It fits this world, and I really like that.
Now, when you see that elsewhere with the Hillel, part of me, is that the actual dragon that's hanging out around him?
I can't help but wonder if that's it's being created.
Yeah. So it's not actually a dragon from their world. It was created by him, however he's able to do that stuff.
Right. So I guess that's what's making me wonder if it isn't the new version of Bizarro, creating clones of things from Krypton.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I'm 100% convinced that's the case, but I'm just throwing that out there. I guess that's some of the evidence that's been leading me to those thoughts. Whatever happens.
Yeah, the fact that the code for the for the metahuman event going on is all units. We got a 666 in progress.
I like that Lure eventually leads Connor to Caitlin, and that it was really clear you weren't sure if Lure was actually going to take that step or not. There was something about that relationship that I really liked that felt very genuine. Like, if it didn't fit her needs or if she needed to escape or leave early or something like that, she would have just left him hanging with that, right? Did you get that vibe with her?
Yeah, kind of. I think part of her, she's got her mission on hand and she has to focus on her mission. But there was a bit of her, she's like, I shouldn't have left him alone.
Exactly.
She is a good person.
So I think that there's that part of her where I see her helping him because it fits that she's able to and she's a good person, but there's that other part of her that would put the mission first and would have left him if she needed to. I guess that's what I'm saying more than anything else.
Yeah, there's definitely that with her.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's it's one of the things that I really am enjoying about this is that not everybody in this feels clean. Like, I feel she's a good person, but there's that part of her that will put duty first.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. Everyone's got their own thing going on in his world. You know, Dallas is Dallas, for lack of... And I mean, to me, the supporting cast is interesting and varied in a way that's very different from Supergirl and from Superman. And that's where there's a distinction in this title. But it's also connecting him more with the realities of the world. And this leads to that great cliffhanger where he stumbles in on the Ravagers, and, you know, then we're going to see him in Legion Lost and stuff like that. I don't know. I like these crossovers. I'm with you on the tightness of these teen characters and how they've been in this world. I've loved Legion Lost. I've loved Ravagers. I've loved Teen Titans. I've loved Superboy. And they've really created a teen world that I've always loved in the DC Universe. I like their teens. I like their second, generation, their next generation characters that are, the ones that are going to be the Justice League when the Justice League is no more. I think there's something to that in both DC and Marvel when they do that. And DC, I thought, has always had a strong teen character set. I liked Young Avengers over at Marvel. That series was really, really good for the same reason. I like those type of characters. X-Men, when they were the teens, kind of behind the scenes, was something I really liked when they were the teen outlaws in the DC and in the Marvel universe, I should say. I always kind of liked the teenage characters and all that. So that's when I started reading the X-Men, where they were more teen outlaws than they were top-tier team. So I don't know. It's good stuff. I'm liking the super books.
Yes, these are definitely some good stuff going on here.
Is there anything you wish for the super books that you're not seeing now? Like, is there something that you're like, wow, they would be perfect if they had this element that I think that they're missing? I'm going to you as more of the super fan out of the two of us. I'm not trying to misrepresent myself because I'm a huge Superman fan, but I think this is more what Batman is to me.
For me right now, they're firing on all cylinders. I can't sit here and say, oh my God, they're missing this, because if they were to do something else, I would enjoy it. Like the Lois and Clark relationship. We have this connection. We have this relationship between the two of them. They're not married. They're not dating. But there is still this connection. There is still this relationship between the two of them. Now, as Clark's friend, I want to see him and Lois and Clark, him and Lois together. I want to see those two together. But I'm not going to sit here and say the story is missing it, because guess what? We do have the Lois and Clark relationship. Mm-hmm. It's just not at the level we all want for our friend, but there is still that relationship there. And as the story progresses, as the story's told, we're going to get maybe a relationship. Maybe we'll get the intimate relationship between the two of them. But no matter what, we do have a Lois and Clark relationship. And I like the fact that this is, we have a cool story that's coming out of all this stuff. So to answer your question, short answer, no. There's nothing that I would say, oh, they're missing the boat on this, because I'm loving everything they're giving me. There's other stuff I'd like to see, of course. I want to see more Crypto. Crypto was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see more of the dog.
Yes.
That was great. I want to see a kneel before Zod moment. I want one of those in this book. And I want a Lex Luthor Superman head-to-head, mono massive, throwdown. I want those moments. Now, we haven't really had, enough of that, or we haven't really had those moments. So guess what? It's just something that's going to come down the pipeline, something we're eventually going to get. But, we got to wait for it. We got to be patient.
I like that they're not over-relying on that.
Exactly.
To me, one of the things that's a strength is they're building and adding to the mythos. I like that I'm feeling signs of the Superman titles holding that place that the Bat books and the Green Lantern books are currently holding. And I want to see them continue to do this with their character sets, where there's ways to make... Because I really would love to see all of their lines feel like events, if that makes sense. So the excitement that I'm feeling to Superman, it feels like there's an event going on right now in the Superman books. I want that. I want to be a part of that. So I'm excited to read it. And it actually is, it's not an event for the sake of an event. It's story-driven, which means we've got a great event filled, story-driven event in Superman that is built to. And I don't have to read 25 different books to be a part of that. I can just read these books and dig it. And I think that's a direction that DC's heading in that's very strong. And they need to keep doing more like this and gradually building these type of things. And I'm really excited for the coming year of Superman with the way the foundation's going in place. I think they've got the right creative teams that are meshing together. I don't think that anything that was going on before was bad. I enjoyed everything that was going on before. But I think now they've got teams that are in an interconnected direction that's going forward that makes and feels like it makes sense for each title and character. And I'm into that. I'm really into that right now.
He is called Hawkman. His gauntlets possess awesome powers.
I want to remind everyone about our show website, ragingbullets.com, but also that you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Google+. Also, I'm trying to put up a lot of the gaming-related social media that I'm on, and I'm going to keep adding to that over the next couple weeks so that way people want to connect with me. I'm even on iOS and stuff like that. So I love playing games with and just connecting with you guys outside of the podcast. I want to shout out our Facebook group in particular. We've got a wonderful, thriving community over there that has really just gone leaps and bounds beyond the show, of just a great community of people who are just constantly posting new content, new thoughts, new ideas about the world of comics and everything relating to it and outside of it as well. Please feel free to post anything in those groups that you feel is relevant to our audience. These can be things outside of comics too, promoting your blogs, websites, podcasts, whatever. Please consider doing that in those groups, because I feel that this is a community show and I'd really very much love to have everyone to be able to be a part of it, to be a part of anything and supporting that you're doing. Please email me at ragingbullets@gmail.com if there's something I don't have posted on our website, a link or something that I can do to point people in your direction. I know a lot of times people shout us out and I really want to make sure to return the favor, so please make sure to let me know that. Like I said, I'm really, really fortunate that I feel this show has benefited heavily from the community aspect of the podcasting world, and I want to give back on that end as well. So thank you for supporting us. Do not forget our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, and voicemail is the way to be a part of it. Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, we are talking Superman this episode, and there's nothing cooler than this new hardcover coming out, Adventures of Superman, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, the hardcover. It collects from the master comics artist, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, work from Superman 294, 301, 302, 307 to 309, and 347. DC Comics presents 1 to 4 and 17, all new collector's edition. This is just such a really, really cool, neat collection. It's regularly $39.99, 50% off only $19.99. If you are not familiar with the work of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, do yourself a favor and do some just Google searching, search the internet, take a look and see what you've been missing. This is definitely a hardcover collection to pick up, especially if you are a Superman fan. I can't recommend it enough. That's DCBService.com. Remember to check in every month to see some of the amazing pre-order deals that they're constantly offering. They're doing everything from bundling to doing 50% off deals to hardcovers to trades to single issues. There's all kinds of really cool ways to save money on your favorite books and actually to increase the amount of reading you are able to do with this wonderful hobby. I want to thank DCBService.com for continuing to support our show, and over at InStockTrades.com. They've been doing this end of the world sale, and every month they keep doing something new. This one, they're doing 45% off all DC and Marvel trades. So do yourself a favor and head on over to that Earth Prime reboot sale for months 11 and 12, and actually it's going to be the last 2 months closing out the year. I know for myself, when I'm looking for holiday gifts for friends, I tend to use InStockTrades.com because I can maximize my dollar. So, if it was a friend that before I was going to get one trade or one hardcover, I can end up getting a couple things because I'm saving money. So they end up getting a better gift because I'm able to save money on it. So with the holiday season coming up, if you got friends who are comic fans, or maybe friends, I've got casual friends who are like they read comics, whatever I end up giving to them, they end up reading. I know, like, I've got a friend of mine who's a Batman fan, for example. So I end up usually getting him a couple of Batman hardcovers, which wind up lasting him for the year. He's very casual. He really enjoys them, but that I'm his main source, so I get, like, the best of the best stuff for him. InStockTrades.com is a great place to go to pick up those amazing deals. And remember, if you do orders of $50 or more, you get free shipping. So with that holiday deal I mentioned, if you want to get yourself a couple trades and hardcovers, get some friends some trades and hardcovers, it adds up to $50 really fast, and you save on shipping with the deals that are going over there. So check out InStockTrades.com for those great deals. I want to thank both of those sites for continuing to support our show. Remember, they are Comixology digital partners. If you are doing any digital purchases, please do them on their websites. It supports them, and they support our show and many other podcasts. Please go to our website and make sure to click on those links and check out their websites to see the amazing deals that you can save from. Our next episode, we are going to be chatting. We're going to talk to Joe Kubert, the first issue of that special that just came out from Joe Kubert. I'd love to do that. It's just kind of a way to kind of acknowledge the passing of a comic book legend in Joe Kubert. Can we also talk, Jim, that Sword of Sorcery? It'd be fun to talk about that book. Talon. We'll talk about the Zero issue and the first issue of Talon. And then we can kind of talk over the week on some of the other things we might want to add into that episode. But does that sound pretty good for an initial lineup?
That sounds awesome for an initial lineup.
We will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Fated for love and loss and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman, talking about Hawkman.